Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the show this week. We have a couple of wonderful guests. I'm going to welcome back Mike from Mike's Solar Garage. Thank you, Mike, for being here. And we have Eric from, or I'm going to say from, the old Jarhead. I'm assuming it's not from the old Jarhead. And so, Eric, thank you for coming and everything. I know we spent a few moments getting kind of acquainted before this, but as you all know, a lot of the times I bring people on at the last minute, like I did with um, what was his name? Now I forgot his name. As I've done with guests before, I'll say. But thanks for all of you for being here. You got anything, opening remarks, Eric, you'd like to start us off with? And then we'll go to Mike after that.
Gosh, I don't know. Am I, I'll say hi. And I started my channel on sawmilling. So you might get a little bit different perspective today, even though I do off-grid power. That's what I do now. But I'm sort of a do-it-all. I'm not tied down to one thing. And Mike asked me earlier, what was my niche in the off-grid power world? I said sawmilling. So let's have fun.
How about you, Mike? You got any opening remarks you'd like to kick us off with?
So with my channel, I think a lot of people are familiar with it. It's really trying to go off grid. We had a conversation before this started about power stations, and I kind of started out in power stations. I think many of us have as well. It's just that kind of evolution. You start with your first power station, portable power station, and you get your second, your third, and all right, let's build something bigger. And now you start getting those EG4 components, those 12,000 XPs and 6,000 XPs and Grid Boss and Flex Boss and all those goodies, and you just keep on building. And eventually you try to get to the point that you're completely off grid, or at least for a lot of us you do. And then you kind of look back and you're like, wow, what a journey. So yeah, that's my channel's really about, is just trying to be less reliant on the grid and less reliant on the power company, and being more self-sufficient.
Yeah, and for me, I mean, most of you know, at least those from you from my channel. I know we have a bunch of guests here, and we're broadcasting on all three YouTubes and Facebook today. So welcome to all the viewers who have not met me or Mike before, and hopefully some that haven't met Eric over there also. We're going to have, I know I've got a lot of freebie memberships to give away. I think Eric said he was going to give some away. And Mike, if you don't know it, you also have some if you want it, if you choose to give some away today. And during a live stream, we have the option of going in and giving a few of them away. So we'll make a habit throughout the show to give those away to people. If you have memberships, it's good for people. I had a bunch of them given away a few years ago. It was pretty cool. We'll get to the comments as we go, and as you know me, I have no problem with comments. That is why I'm here. I come here, and me and Eric were talking about this earlier today, is like live streams aren't really a super revenue stream for any of us. We look at it as a way to just connect with you. So for me, I encourage the feedback, the communication, the talk, the chat. Anything that you have to say. And to my Facebook users, I apologize. StreamYard at the last minute told me that my Facebook live stream was deleted. I re-added it, so if you found the new URL, congratulations and thanks for joining. Let's say hi to a few of the regulars. Comments are already starting to come in, so let's just see if we can say hi to a few of them as we go along here. Seattle Steve 9766 says, no, wait for what? Wait for membership?
he's probably wondering when I said I could give away some memberships.
Well, we'll give everybody a heads up before we do it. How's that? Because I know a lot of the times when you give away free memberships like that, there's a little bit of a race to get to them. And once they're gone, they're gone. So
well, and the way they work, and YouTube does this kind of, well, it's kind of different. Let's just say that. So YouTube controls the way memberships are given away when you do these, and it randomly draws them from your entire subscriber base. Though I noticed something on my last live. There were several people on the live that actually got one of those memberships. And so I think they may have made a change there. And we're going to find out tonight, because they set it up so you can give away 5 at a time, and you can do 10 a month. And so when I give away my first 5 tonight, it'll be interesting to see if it draws from the audience, or just that was the one lucky thing the last time I did it. So we'll find out, but it is totally random. Unfortunately, though I did see there is a way now that you can buy memberships for your audience. I'm not exactly sure how to do that yet. That's a new feature. So, we'll see. But we'll definitely do some gifting tonight.
I've seen that one in the past, where I had someone on my live stream give away 10 gift memberships a couple weeks in a row. And I encouraged it that way, simply because instead of sending me a super where I get the money, give it to the live stream, give somebody something for it. And that was kind of cool. So, all right. Let's say hi to Ron Hawkins. Hey, hello, Ron. How you doing? Glad to have you. And Zigzag Ground Zero. Howdy, howdy. And hello from Eastern Washington State. Eastern Washington State. Well, you're up there a bit. Not getting cold up there yet, is it?
No, gosh, I wish. No, it's still fire. In fact, I had a new fire start about 9 miles from my place yesterday. So we're trying to watch that closely.
Wow.
If the audience and you guys don't know, I live in Eastern Washington, and my property is actually about 20 miles south of the Canadian border. And I've got 20 acres in a arid pine forest, and pine forests typically would naturally burn every 5 to 10 years. And I've dodged some of the biggest fires in Washington state history in the past. The last closest one was 2015, and it was half a mile from my place, which is entirely too close. And this year we've got 2 big ones that were burning that are mostly just smoldering now, but both of those over 140,000 acres. One was 14 miles away, and one was just under 20 miles away. And if that seems like a long distance, those fires can cover that distance in an hour if the wind pushes hard enough. In fact, they can cover more than that in an hour. I've seen them do 60 miles in an hour when there was enough grass mixed in between the trees and the wind was blowing hard. So 10 miles is nothing. 10 or 20 miles.
The embers from those can carry a couple of miles alone, right?
Yes. Yeah. And so that's what happens. Yeah. They basically spot further out. And as the spots pick up, then they spot and they just go like crazy. Firestorm.
So what do you do to prepare your property? Do you have like a metal roof on your house? Do you have fire breaks? Do you have trees removed X distance from structures? What do you, because it sounds like these have gotten really close, which is quite scary.
Yeah, and actually, funny that you should ask. I did a video, I think Tuesday's video this week, on doing just that. And every year, the first thing you do is you drive everything down to dirt around your cabin, your house, or whatever you have. And if you own a home in the woods, then you have to know that forest fires happen. They naturally do that. We've had smoky seasons in the Pacific Northwest that go back to the very first people that lived here. In fact, the first papers in Seattle and Portland used to have articles in them every summer about the smoky season. So this isn't a new phenomenon for those, it's right. The news is carrying it today, so people see it, but it's been going on forever. And so if you live in the woods, you cannot have bushes and all kinds of things all right around your house. You think a tree that's shading your house is a good idea, especially where we are, because you can easily get into the 90s and lower hundreds there. And it's very dry, so shade is nice. Shade means you have a tree over your house that can burn your house down. And so you have to get a 50-foot, usually minimum 50 feet from your house to the nearest trees. You've got to get rid of all what they call ladder fuels, and you have to thin the forest out. You can't have, we all want what we think of as natural forests, which are really thick forests. That's not true. Naturally, forests burn and kill off the weaker trees, and then the stronger ones survive, and you get separation between the trees. and the fuel load at the bottom of the trees also burns off if it's natural. So because we stop the fires ourselves, which you can argue is good or bad, we have to go remove those fuels. And so if you're interested, look on my channel, the old Jarhead. About a week or so ago, there's a video on there about racing up to protect the cabin, and you'll see what we do. And it's drive it down to dirt, put in fire breaks, thin the trees out, remove all ladder fuels. Yes, to a metal roof. Now, my cabin had the crawl space also enclosed. Last year, we finally got that done. It's currently partially open right now, which is bad, right? You need that stuff all buttoned up, closed up, and then you do a lot of praying.
Yeah.
All right.
Semper Fi there. I guess that's Mario Luna. Semper Fi, Yuma, Arizona.
I'm going to go through these quickly. We're going to have a lot of comments today, so if I barrel through something one of you want to speak about, please let me know. I was the guy who always said that power banks were foolish, and I had a full solar and batteries at our place. Then a company sent me one to try. Now I like them.
Yeah, that's one of my guys. I saw that and I kind of chuckled. Power stations have their place. I mean, I've always said that. I'm always a guy that's trying to teach people how to get away from power stations if you can, because I think it's too easy to get them and then you fall into this trap. They're very limited. Even the best power stations are very, very limited. And building your own system is frankly just better in so many different ways. It's less expensive, and far more robust, more expandable, more upgradable. It's limitless. And I know Mike was talking about that a little bit earlier, same thing. But I get there are a lot of people that either don't like power stations and then find out that they do have a place, or there are those that love power stations and refuse to do anything else, and then finally one day realize that after they've done the old Jarhead hack and added 20 kilowatt hours of battery to their 1,000 watt hour power station, that maybe if they just added another inverter, they could do more, right? So,
in the price too, power stations are phenomenal, but when you start looking at larger systems, you start looking at critical loads and above, instead of just running the fridge or running this or running that, the price just goes up dramatically to where you can spend $60,000 on a system with power stations and maxing out the batteries, or you could have spent 15 and had the same output with building your own system. So it just gets to where it doesn't make sense.
And to support exactly what both of you said, it's one of those things where every power station has its purpose. If you have a very defined purpose, you want to go camping and you need power to charge your phones over the weekend. Power station, easy solution. But if you're trying to do a whole home backup, or you want to start with something small and build to a whole home backup, it doesn't have the flexibility. You're going to pay for the premium of them assembling it and telling you what those specs are, as opposed to you building it and deciding what those specs are. So
well, absolutely.
I think that,
yeah, that's it's funny because that's what got me into power stations. I'd already built my off-grid system and had been using it for 10, 11 years. But I used to go camping, loved to go camping as a kid. I always was camping. And being an old Jarhead, the VA has realized that war veterans are 4 times as likely to get sleep apnea than anybody else. And I happen to have sleep apnea. Gee whiz. So I had to get a CPAP. Falling asleep driving down the road isn't a good idea, and after you didn't sleep for 20 years, getting a CPAP's a good thing, but it means you can't go camping unless you have power. And so that led me to buying a small power station so that I could breathe, so I could sleep. And it opens up your world. And I think, absolutely they have a place. And even at home backup, there are people that live in apartments that couldn't put in a permanent system, or they rent a place and they can't put in a permanent system. So I totally get that they have a place, but that's part of the reason why I do the hacks that I do. And I don't know if you guys are aware, because for the audience, we've just met, the three of us. I think Matt and Mike knew each other, but I'm new to them. I've actually been credited by a charity called Eyes on Ukraine as introducing them to the idea of hacking power station expansions. And they now use that in Ukraine for both civilians and military to extend the power stations that they have there so they can keep doing the things they need to be able to do. So I think power stations have their place, but I'm always trying to encourage people to expand, especially if you're hacking a power station. Well, then you're ready to build your own system, and that's where I'm always trying to get people to realize that and it really opens up the world of possibilities. I hear about power stations failing all the time. Good brands, I don't care what it is, Jackery, Anchor Solix, Blue Eddy, Opus, Pecron, I don't care, they all fail. And I think any all-in-one based system, especially a mass-produced system, is going to have that potential. But you buy a Outback charge controller, or Morningstar, Midnight Solar, Victron, right? You get into these EG4, you get into these companies that they primarily specialize in what they do only. Those systems you can buy and put them in service forever. I have an Outback that's been running now for, I believe it's going on 9 years, flawlessly. I have a Morningstar that I ran from 2010 until about 2024, I think it was. So 14 years in use, and I know I could put it in use today. I just changed it out so I could test out a cheap charge controller and see how long it would last, which it's outlasting me now. So I'm thinking it's time to change it back out. I'm going to put a Victron in. But I think that's the thing that I'm always trying to drive home is, when you build your own system, it's really kind of a buy once, keep forever thing. And that's why in my videos, you'll often notice that above my head is that Morningstar just sitting up on the wall. I call it my wall art, but the truth is I could take that down and hook that up in a system today and it would still work. And I believe it'd do that in 10 years from now. And I think a lot of power stations, maybe they will, maybe they won't. There is one, and one of my viewers mentioned it earlier, and that was the Convolt system. But I think Convolt is different because the guys that designed that system made it so that you could fix it, and that's an unusual thing in the power station world. So anyway, sorry for going so long. Go ahead.
Yep. So it's equivalent to what Slate Truck is trying to do with the automotive industry. Make something very, very simple that the average person can field repair and do that instead of what the big three are doing. So yeah, very cool.
Yeah, I saw that, and I think honestly, I'm an old Mini Cooper guy. I'm like, come on. If a car manufacturer said, look, I'm just going to build something that people can fix, cheap to drive, it'll get you to the grocery store and back, I bet they would sell 1 billion of them. And look, Volkswagen Beetles, they're still running around. Why? Because they're simple and fixable.
Yep.
So here we are, off-grid power to Volkswagen Beetles and Mini Coopers.
And we started in sawmills.
Yes. Yes.
All right. So we got a great show. I know we got a lot of comments. We'll get to them all. But we got a great show today. We're going to be talking about, if you haven't noticed, the conversation's really started to transition that way already. We're going to be talking a lot about how to build a system and what we did or didn't do in most cases that will allow your system to grow, to be upgradable, and then those things that you have to change and rebuild. I know that all of us, I know I have, especially I have, you put things together, you think, oh, this is all I'm ever going to need, and then you get a little bit further down the road and realize you need more. I've got a bunch of examples of that. So we're going to tell you a little bit about what we've learned and what we've done. And I put together a list of a couple of questions just to kind of to stir the conversation, but I also want to make sure that we pick those conversations, those questions out of the chat down at the bottom. So if you guys have something specific that you want us to talk about, a question there, let's start off by saying, let's precede it with maybe some kind of notification, like a QQQ at the beginning of it, so I can recognize which ones are actually questions and which ones are just conversations, and I don't try to go through every one of them out there. And we'll do it that way for today. One of the first things I'm going to kick off here, and I know we've got, I'm going to just start it off with just a question for all three of us to go through and answer. There is probably no right way or wrong way to answer this question, but let's look at looking at let me try this in English. Looking at the systems each of us has today, what is something that we intentionally did to make this system easier to expand in the future? It doesn't have to be anything big, but something that you thought about during planning that you thought, well, this would make it a little bit better in the future. Or even if it's a power station and you knew you could add batteries to it, that would be thinking ahead a little bit. Maybe still limiting to it a point. But I really want to kind of give everyone an idea of really what this live stream is about. And this is the crutch of it, building something that's expandable. So we'll start off, which one of you guys want to go first? I'll go last.
I can start off first.
Yeah, Mike.
So for my system, the main thing was figuring out what I wanted the system to do. That's probably the biggest thing, because I determined how much power that I would need first, and then I started to design it based on that. So as you can see behind me, you can see that I have, hopefully I'm pointing at it now, bus bars that I made. And all my system has homemade bus bars that are 2-inch by 8-inch by 1/2-inch thick copper that I drilled and basically made it that could handle 2,000 amps each. And the thing is that I wanted to make sure that when I'm building a system that it's fully expandable. And I have 3 inverters for my home setup, 2 for my shop, and I have as much inverter power as I would ever need. And batteries, I'm pretty much there as well, and same with solar panels. With excess now, I'm mining crypto. But the big thing was, I don't want to have to buy things twice. I would rather buy things once. And it's something that I see with a lot of folks that are building their system. They'll start off with a good idea and they'll say, hey, I'm going to get 1 inverter, I'm going to get a couple of batteries, I'm going to set it up, and I'll be good. That's going to power my loads and I'll be fine. And I see other people online doing it, so I'm just going to do that. Not necessarily digging into what their usage is and looking at the formulas and figuring out realistically what's needed, and also having a plan of what done is. And I think that's really important, is what's your final goal and are you building towards that? So for example, my home system, you see I have the 3 inverters behind me. With everything turned on in my house, I pull between 120 and 130 amps, and that was turning on the AC, the stove burners. I have an all-electric house, turning on the oven, all the TVs, the HVAC with the heat strips on, and just every possible load. And I measured, and it was around 130 or so. So then I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to need to have enough inverter power to power it all, because the deal that I made with my wife was this: if I was to take the house off grid, she wouldn't have to change anything. So if she wants to be cooking on the stove and have the microwave on and do a load of laundry at the same time, as my daughter is doing whatever that she's doing with her electronics, that it covers everything. And no one has to think twice about, do I need to turn this off or okay, what combinations can I run? There's none of that. The deal was, I don't want to have to change a thing for you, so just make it work for me. And that was the deal with the wife. So each one of my inverters can put out 50 amps continuous. Now, 3 is 2, 2 is 1, 1 is none. We all know about that. You have a failure, you want to make sure that you're not in the dark. So with that, if I lose one, we're still in really good shape. But with 3 of them all on, I don't have to worry about what loads are on. Everything just works. And I did the same for the shop to where I can lift multiple vehicles at the same time and no issues at all. So it's kind of planning ahead. What are your needs? What are your end goals? And then once you have that defined, you have that scope. So if you're in IT or project management, what have you, you have a scope. You don't want to have scope creep. You want to know exactly what you're trying to do and then put together your plan and then execute that plan. And that's what I've done. Now, I do have changes going on in the future for mine to where everything's going to be going through conduit to make things even better. But I guess that's the big thing to me. So to bring it all back in, have a plan, execute the plan, and make sure you have a definition of done.
All right.
Lot to absorb
Good
there, Mike.
I am sorry I go on and I should pause and say and ask questions. Does this make sense? Does that? But I kind of
I have a question for
and,
you. I've got a
yes.
question for you. I'm curious about your 3 inverters because I don't do big systems. And
Okay.
I'm curious if you're feeding all 3 of those into the same panel or if they're all going to separate sub panels.
Oh, that's a very good point. So all 3 of these are going into a combiner panel. The combiner panel then goes into my main panel, and I use a interlock switch. So I can use grid if I switch the interlock over, or I can use solar, and that's how I have it set up. A lot of people do a transfer switch. For me, it's just simpler to do the interlock, and my goal is to stay mostly off grid, which I think I'm pretty much there that I could be permanent off grid, but to be mostly still use the grid when I need to. I had a recent weather event to where we had 7 days of heavily clouded, and that pretty much tapped out my batteries. So, those
Right.
really extreme situations, having grid as a backup is good.
Well, so and this is not me answering my question yet, but the reason I asked you is because looking at those 3 inverters brings me back to something that I'm always contemplating. And I suppose if I were to look at the original question, which was what did you do to make your system expandable, I'd like to back up a minute and say that one of the things that I think a lot of us do in the beginning, especially if you're being budget conscious, right? In my case, when I built my system, it was not for a permanent residence, though it ended up being a permanent residence for a while, but that wasn't the intent. And so you build a system with the thought that, this is not really enough, but I'll get by on the weekends and eventually I'll add more to it. But one of the challenges that I faced after a while was when I did a big upgrade on my system when I moved in, and I needed to have a big enough inverter to run power tools, you name it, anything I needed to run. So I put in a big low frequency inverter, which just gobbles up the idle power consumption, right? And I've often contemplated that I should put in maybe 1,000-watt pure sine wave inverter on the side that I could run most of the cabin without tapping into that big 4-kilowatt inverter, and then throw it into sleep mode, eco mode, so that it just trickles in a little bit of power as needed. And I've often thought about that, thinking, am I going to have to put in a sub panel? And that's the reason I haven't done it. For those that know me and know my channel, if you ever wonder why I haven't done it, it's because I'm always sitting back thinking about, well, how the hell do I tie that in? And just don't use those loads. So anyway, you and I might have to talk about that a little bit, because maybe I'll get some ideas to do that upgrade on my system. But before you answer me, I should answer the question that Matt asked, which is when I designed my system, I used a spreadsheet that was floating around on a forum called the Country Plans Forum, which is a small off-grid cabin build type forum. This is back, 20 years ago in the forum building days. And I used that spreadsheet to build out what I needed and then looked at what I could afford and decided that I could build the system a little bit smaller, knowing that I'd want to upgrade it. And so I did kind of a similar thing to Mike in that I put in big bus bars. Truthfully, I put them in poorly and didn't do a very good job of it, which is something that can happen and you can learn by. But I tried to build my battery bank setup. And for those that don't know, I worked in telecommunications for nearly 30 years. So I've worked around big battery banks and all that kind of stuff. But I'm not an engineer and not an electrician by trade. And so I had to learn some things the hard way. And one of them was I built this beautiful copper bus bar setup so that I could put more batteries in eventually, but then didn't really tie all of those battery cables down together very well, which means that your system can draw off of different strings of batteries at different rates. And that's a whole nother discussion. But in any case, between that and after making my first big mistake, which was switching my panels from parallel to series due to the distance from the cabin I set them, when I bought a new charge controller, it was with the intent that that charge controller would allow me to expand my solar array considerably. And so I mentioned earlier the Morningstar TriStar MPPT, which I have no affiliation with, by the way, but it's a good company. If you call them or email them, they'll answer you. But I bought that charge controller with the absolute intent that at some point I would add more solar. And the other thing I did, which frankly wasn't a good move, but I put in a larger midnight solar combiner box because I was going to add more solar arrays of the same panels. But if you're in this industry at all today, you know, if you buy panels today, they won't be available tomorrow. So not much point in doing that. But those are the things I did to try and have my system so that I could expand it. But I will tell you this, I learned from building my system that when you build your own system, it is infinitely expandable anyway. Just by the very nature that if you're building, especially if you're building a component-based system, that it's a simple matter of swapping out components down the road if you want to expand. And I've done that a few times. So back to you, Matt.
Did you want to answer him, Mike? I thought there was an answer.
Yeah, the inverter question.
Can you rephrase the inverter question?
I've got a big 4,000 watt low frequency inverter for heavy loads, big induction loads, you know, table saws, planers, air conditioner, whatever. And it gobbles up the power, uses about 125 watts idle power consumption. And I've often thought that I could do really, really well if I were to put in a much smaller pure sine wave, high frequency inverter, like 1,000 watt pure sine wave inverter, or 1,500 watts or something for normal loads, like my lights, my Generac eco generator. It doesn't even use enough power to kick on that big inverter when it's in eco mode, so that I'm not gobbling up 125 watts. And I thought with your setup, I was going, I wonder if there's a way to have that 1,000 watt inverter and that 4,000 watt inverter tied to that system, so that if I needed the big inverter, all I got to do is turn it on, take it off of eco mode, or just turn it on, rather than putting in multiple sub panels.
I think the biggest problem
you could put in a manual transfer switch that essentially up is one inverter and then flip it down is the other inverter, and then have the output from it instead of like an on-off one.
What I did too is I used a breaker panel, and so you have the output instead of the input be the main lines, it's the output, and then you just put in two breakers there. And you feed one inverter in one breaker, one inverter in the other, and then put your interlock on that. And then it'll only be one inverter or the other, and you can just switch back and forth. I'm using that for the AC coupling, to where it either goes to the house or it goes to the 6,000 for AC coupling. But it's the same theory.
Yeah,
but it was a little bit less complex solution, but it also provided the breakers was what I was looking at.
Yeah, no, that's a good idea. I
It's
like that idea.
so a combiner panel essentially, and
Hmm.
that would work. The per code, you're supposed to not have anything else on it. Just if it's a combiner panel, then it's a combiner panel. Um, I don't think all of us kind of follow through with that, but essentially what it's supposed to be.
Well, where
But it's a
my
Um,
cabin
combiner,
is,
meaning there's two sources, right?
right. So like my combiner
So you
panel
can,
here, I also have plugged into it my SPD, and then I have another circuit coming out of it, which is then going into the shop, which goes into another sub panel, which is to power my Bitcoin miners. So
right,
technically,
what you're saying is that if I'm feeding, as long as if it's a combiner, meaning there's more than one source for power, like your three
mhm,
12,000s, then the box has to be dedicated. But if it's
correct,
just a back feed, there can be one as long as it's at the top or the bottom of the panel, correct?
correct.
Okay. That's what I understood also.
yeah, in my case, the grid is 3 miles away, and the
You're not getting that.
inspectors, the
That's a long
inspectors
extension
can,
cord.
yeah, and the inspectors can stay the 45 miles away they are.
So
I'm
are
in
you
the deep woods.
so are you completely off grid?
Oh yeah. Well, so
Nice.
yes and no. So for those that don't know me, I have two places. And where I am right now is my home about 250 miles south of my cabin. And the cabin is completely off grid. And I lived there for a while and then spent quite a bit of time there, probably as much as a third of every month there. Um, Lately, a lot less time because my back has, I'm actually waiting to get back surgery. And so I can't do all the things I normally do when I'm up at the cabin. So now it's more of I travel up there right now about once a month or so. But I used to be there, 3 or 4 days or to a week at a time, twice every month. And when I wasn't living there anymore. But it is, like I said, it's about 20 miles south of the Canadian border in the middle of the Okanagan National Forest. And I'm 23 miles from the nearest town. And in the wintertime, you better have a good four-wheel drive and chains.
Yeah. All right. So that leaves me with the question of, which was the original question, looking at the system you did today. I only did a few things that ended up really not being enough in that direction. I put in some bigger bus bars for my battery bus bars. I separated out between that and put a nice breaker between that and my bus bar for my inverters and stuff. Um, I wish I had done something more like Mike and built bigger, stronger bus bars. And I also wish that I had done recently when I upgraded all those new panels that I just installed. I bounced up over 200 amps in charging. And so once you get up over 200 amps, a lot of the connectors that I had between things, between the bus bars and stuff, wasn't big enough. So I really wish that I had beefed up that piece a bunch. Um, but at the same time, I think that's what's important here to outline too, from my perspective, is some of the things that you do when you think you're preparing for the future. Technology changes a lot, and it kind of outdates what you did. So I'll give you a perfect example of what I'm going through right now for exactly this scenario. And Mike, no laughing. Um, I'm watching your face too, and don't do it. But I started off with the 6000 XP in my RV, and it was perfect for my RV. My RV was a 50 amp split phase anyway, worked great. But then when I got to the house, it's like, okay, I'm going to just do another 6000, and if I ever need to, I'll add multiple of them together. Well, now I'm at that point where I wish I had done the 12,000, but at the time that I made that choice, it was probably the right choice because the price deviation was big. Now it's like a couple $100 between the 6,000 and the 12,000, and the difference in input and all of that is huge. But to answer the question, I did some work on the bus bars. I did make sure that I had enough room for PV expansion with the 6,000, but all of which isn't enough anymore. It would be nice on the 12, for example, on the 12,000, I could put all of my strings together in one 6,000 XP. Right now, I've got it split across a LZ power inverter, a Victron 250-100 inverter, and my 6,000. And I've got all of the strings allocated all the way across the board. I could probably put them all on a 12,000 XP all at one time and solve that problem. So, and that brings down that idle consumption that Eric was talking about a little while ago. You know, that idle consumption for me is huge because I have to have all that for the charging, but I don't have to have it all for providing power. So that's kind of the thing. Now, Eric, I will say in my RV, I ran into the same problem where I had the 6,000 sitting there a lot of the times. And if you're out and you're running around and you're doing things and you don't really need all that power, or if it's just late at night and all I wanted was the small inverter, I do know that some of the 1,000 and 2,000 watt RV inverters have what they call automatic switches in them. And so what happens is when you turn your inverter on, they switch off and it bypasses to use your inverter. When you switch that off, it switches back to this little inverter with this little tiny thing. That was built into my RV. So if I ever turn my 6,000 off, it runs from my original 12-volt battery system, which I wouldn't want to do.
Kind of sounds like what the DC converter does.
It's very similar to the DC converter, but it actually is an actual inverter.
Yeah, see, like I have a newer RV now, and it doesn't even have an inverter. So it's like, and I've had some options to put one in. In fact, I got an offer to do a convolt system, but I'm not going to do it, partly because of my back, and I won't be doing physical things for a while, but two, because I keep thinking about how to integrate something like that, and I just don't. I think putting in something like a 6,000 XP would be a better option, really. I mean, the convolt, it's a great option. It's just physical size, and where do you put it? But for the cabin, I struggle because, for example, I've had some conversations with Big Battery. I've had conversations with Signature Solar about doing like Signature Solar. I was very close to getting either the 6,000 or 12,000 XP. They had a sale going on with the 12,000, and I was really seriously looking at that. But the problem is all of my power equipment is in a super insulated, partially subgrade room behind the cabin. And until I get the deck completed all the way around and cover that room up and have access without having to shovel, I can't turn that equipment on unless I can do it from inside the cabin. And so the system I have today has a remote, and it sits inside the cabin by the wood stove. And all I got to do is unlock the door, walk in, flip the switch, the lights come on, the power comes on. I get the wood stove lit up, in the wintertime. But if I were to put in a system like the EG4s, or frankly, almost any other system I've looked at that's a 48 volt based system, because that's what I'd like to do, none of those have real remote on inverter capabilities, because I don't want to shut the system off. I leave my charge controllers running 24/7, 365. My batteries always will have a charge. They're also always slightly used if I'm not there. So I have 12 volt fans that are always running off the system. I just use a step down converter, and because it's a 24 volt system today. But yeah, so anyway, I've looked at all these systems, and every time I do, I run into, and like you guys, I run a YouTube channel. So I get companies that reach out to me all the time. Hey, how would you like to try this? And I go, yeah, does it have a remote start? Nope. All right. Can't work. Why would I do that then? And so that's my big challenge. But at the same time, one of the challenges because of all of this is that I have a Generac 6 kW EcoGen. They don't even make it anymore. And I put that in 2013. I think the lowest they make today is the 8K. And it does not have an alternator. So when the generator is running or not, doesn't matter, it uses a battery charger. And when it's not running, that battery charger provides a trickle charge, and it might just be, 5 watts. It's not very much. And the eco setting on my inverter needs 10 watts to start up, and it won't start up for that generator charger. And so that's what really led me to this whole thing about thinking about, I don't really need this big 4,000 watt low frequency inverter running all the time, right? It just consumes the power. I actually did a video on it doesn't matter. Build your battery bank around it and it doesn't really matter, right? Which is kind of true.
Right.
But today I go, I could save myself a couple kilowatt hours of battery power if I wasn't using that, right? And in the wintertime, that makes a lot of difference. So I keep thinking, if I were to put in a smaller inverter that could run the cabin lights, that could handle the refrigerator when it fires up, so it would have to be something that could peak at just over 1,000 watts and the rest of the time run at around 1,000 watts, but that uses, like 5 watts at idle. It'd save me a ton of power, but I still want that big inverter for running those heavy startup loads like, a planer, a table saw, air conditioning unit, whatever. And that's why I've got that big low frequency inverter. But again, it has a remote. I don't have to shovel snow when there's 3 feet of snow on the ground. And I just had to crawl up there and literally winch myself up the hill, because I've had to do that, to get to my cabin. And before I can turn the lights on, I got to shovel 3 feet of snow around the back room to turn the power on. That doesn't cut it.
Yeah. It sounds like what you need something with the auto transfer switch in it that would just turn on when the grid goes off, and then sits with a really low idle. I reviewed a little product, and I'm not sure it's going to be big enough or reliable enough for what you're looking for, but it does sound like it fits the bill for what you're doing. But it was an auto transfer switch that it was a 2,000 watt 48 volt, but it had like idle consumption of, like, when there was nothing on, like 8 watts. It's just crazy low. But when the grid came on, or in your case, your bigger inverter came on, it would automatically bypass and just shut down. Which was kind of, at the time I'm thinking, okay, this is really only good in an RV, but it actually sounds like that might be a good one for you, because when you shut your inverter off, then this one would kick in and provide a couple thousand watts, but not a full load. Now, the only problem that I ran into with it is it worked. It was a good workhorse and stuff when it was cool outside, but when the temperature outside got up around 100 degrees, it started degrading terribly. To the point where, at 105 or so, it could barely run a couple hundred watts. Other than that, it surged okay. It started hand saws and drills and, practically devices that it needs. But that, for me, I'm a solar shed. It's hot. And when it was hot, I can't, a lot of the times I'll discharge a small 24 volt system that I use for testing. I'll discharge the batteries with like a charge inverter over into my 48 volt system. And then allow it to charge again. That way it doesn't just sit at full charge all the time. And even that, I wasn't able to sit there idle. And then when the charge inverter would start up, even running at a couple, 7 or 8 amps, it was just too much, and it would just beep, buzz out. And then it never couldn't handle the temperature. But if it's cool enough, it should be a good fit for you. But that's what I'm thinking. You need one of those with an automatic transfer switch, like the one in my RV, which is a little bit bigger, or that one there.
Well, and I actually think even the idea of the breaker that you could switch manually back and forth would most likely work, especially because a lot of the smaller inverters also have remotes. But the reality is I wouldn't even necessarily need a remote for it, because, if I can just switch it over to that and let it run off of, that smaller pure sine wave inverter, little 1,000 watt unit that just barely, I've got a 2,000 watt 12 volt inverter here that idles along at about 5 watts. Something like that honestly would be using as much or less power than my 12 volt fans use, frankly, right? Yeah. And I could let that run full time and never shut it off until I need to switch on the big one for when I'm out there doing some woodworking, or it's like this time of year with 95 degrees out. I'm running a not very good window banger air conditioner that just cranks, at 1,000 watts nonstop when it's running. Then I could actually leave it on a lot more, perhaps annually, never even shut it off. Right. In the wintertime, if it gets a little bit low, it's okay, because an automatic generator start switch would kick on and exercise the generator anyway. So, and then it's just a matter of turning lights on and off when you walk into the cabin. So I like that idea. And that may be something that I look at doing once I can get back up there and do those things. Cause I've got some Hyperion solar panels that I bought from Signature Solar, and I got 3 of them sitting in my wood shop still to this day, and it's almost 7, 8, 9 months later. And those are for the cabin, and I just haven't been able to get them up there and do the work because I have to wait, and I got to get my back bolted back together first. So good times.
So I've got a question for you on that, and I understand exactly what you're trying to do, and it makes a lot of sense. Looking at it in maybe a different way, if you have those additional panels, and once your back is good and you're able to put those up, is that enough to just leave that 4K on all the time, or do you need more batteries as well? And the reason why I'm asking that is the 4K is an old-fashioned heavy iron one. It's going to be reliable as reliable can be. And if you have like a small 1,000 or 2,000 watt one, the reliability is a lot of the time is questionable. So you could have an issue when you're not there.
And that's a good point. So first of all, I actually have panels on that array today. They're just 16, 17-year-old 205 watt poly panels. And I'm going to switch those out with the new 400 watt bifacials. So I'll go from 615 watts off the poly panels to 1,200 watts of bifacial panels. I actually can run my 1,000 watt air conditioner all day long in the summertime with the power that I produce. I produce over 2,400 watts of solar, and one of those arrays is movable. So I have 2 arrays. One's a ground mount that we kind of built and designed. My neighbor and I did. He was a metal worker, and I can go out and rotate it throughout the day if I want to, or if I see power dipping at all. And then I've got 1,800 watts on the roof, and just over actually. But so I produce plenty of power. And you're right that if you're gone for long periods of time, the only actual issue that would happen is the generator's battery could actually die. And I've actually had that happen a couple times in the beginning when I first put it in 2013. And then in 2014, the winter of 2013-14, if I left, probably would have been 14, I guess. Whenever I would leave, sometimes if I thought I was going to be gone a long time, I would shut everything down because my wife lived 5 hours away. So if I was going to go home for a week and I decided I'm going to be gone a little bit too long to leave everything running, I might shut everything down and I wouldn't disconnect the generator. By disconnect, I mean I actually later installed a knife switch on the generator battery, start battery for the generator, so that I could completely disconnect that battery from the generator. I wouldn't do that, and I'd take off and be gone, and I'd come back and the generator battery would be dead. And then in the winter of, I think, 15, I killed the battery because it died and it froze. And of course, now you need a new battery. And that happened to me a couple times where I finally realized it's drawing enough power. The brains of the generator are drawing enough power that if there's nothing charging it, that start battery it's a car battery, right?
Right.
So you got a little parasitic drain going on that if you don't disconnect it or keep it under charge, it will die. And I even asked Generac when I was doing some repairs to it, I said, what about putting on a little solar battery maintainer? And the tech advised me not to do that. And he said, honestly, this system, the way it's designed, really does not like multiple charge sources. And I personally don't know that that's true, but I went through about 3 control modules on that generator in the first couple years. Now they had trouble with them, and the last time it got replaced, I think, was 2014 or 15. And so, knock on wood, we've got 11, 12 years on the last one. But I've decided that rather than, that's something I'm willing to not do. Let's put it that way, because I just have a knife switch that I just disconnect the battery. But I would love to be able to leave everything hooked up and running and have that stay charged throughout the winter. Because one of the things I see with a battery I replaced last year, in fact, that even though I disconnect it, if it sits for 2 or 3 months, I get out there, I'll have a battery warning alarm because the voltage on the battery has dropped below whatever they've set it at, right? Below 12.8 volts or something like that. And it works fine. Once it's got a charges back up and away you go. But it's always one of those things that I think, if I could just leave an inverter on to keep that thing running, and then and enough to power lights and things in the cabin, so I don't need that big one, that may be the answer. Now, I would counter what you said, because I don't disagree. I wouldn't put a real inexpensive one on necessarily. I think, Victron makes some inverters that probably would do just fine.
They do. Yep.
And I know they make some small ones that, and my system's currently 24 volts. So, and that's the other thing. I want to switch to 48, but every time I move that direction, I lose the remote. And if I don't have that remote switch capability, and I'm not about to do it just yet. Although I did have a conversation with somebody recently that if I get my porch roof done over the back room, I won't have to shovel snow. I could leave it that way. And if the Bluetooth works, then it would be great. But here's the thing. I don't want to shut the controllers off. So these all-in-one systems that I currently don't use, I have one that I've played with, but if you can turn the inverter off, but leave everything else running, I'd be happy with that. But I don't want to shut down charge controllers. I don't ever shut them down.
I think your Victron is a very good way to go. I was trying to think outside the box of another way that you can keep that battery charged. If you have a power station that you can plug a battery charger into, and then you just leave the AC off, and a lot of them are Wi-Fi, to where then remotely you can just turn on the AC output and charge up that generator battery from time to time, and then just turn that AC output off on the power station, maybe top it off a couple times during the winter time, and use a power station to do that.
No, I don't think that. To me, it wouldn't make any sense, because I've already got 10 kilowatt hours of battery sitting right there.
Okay. I was just thinking something you could turn on the charge and then turn back off.
Yeah, now what I could do, now you sparked this old brain of mine. What I could do is I could actually, when you throw that knife switch and disconnect the battery from the generator, I could put a solar battery, maintain it on then.
Yes.
And because it'd be disconnected from the generator, you don't have a source that it doesn't like. That might be something that I have to do.
What is your battery, your normal system battery voltage? Is it 24 or 12?
24.
24. And so your generator battery is 12 or 6, right?
12.
So you could easily, when you throw that switch, you could easily take that 24 input, go straight to a Victron charger, and straight into that generator battery, and
you're right.
Charge it right off of that
You're
battery.
right.
You wouldn't
Look
need
at that
solar
guy.
at all.
Well, I want to stop you for a second. I hope the audience is hearing this, because we all do different things, and I love this as a guy that does YouTube stuff. I love sitting here and having this conversation, because what you just said, it blows my mind that I haven't thought of that, because I should have. So that's brilliant. I mean, here I am sitting with 2,400 plus watts of solar charging up a 10 kilowatt hour battery bank that I could absolutely throw.
Yep.
Yeah, a little cheap 10 amp Victron, one of those little bitty $50 ones, and you just cook up 24 as your input, 12 as your output. Boom. Hell, for that
Just
matter,
throw a fuse on it.
you could even set the Victron to schedule to turn off and on when you wanted it, so it would only charge for an hour a day or something.
That is fantastic, because you're absolutely right. You know what? For that, I'm going to give away 5 memberships right now on my
Me too.
channel, and maybe one of you guys will get one.
All right, here goes 5 from me also.
Yeah. Oh, good Lord.
If you get one, let
I'm
us know. I'd love to see it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm still blown away, Matt. I'm going, that is so simple. Why the hell didn't I think this has been something that's been driving me nuts for hell since 2013. So 13 years.
Well, you know what made me think of it? Honestly, I can't take credit for it completely, but last night I was sitting here and I'm testing this stupid 24-volt battery, and I'm like, oh, the sun's down. I'm gonna have to wait till tomorrow. And I'm like, okay, I've got kilowatts of 48 volt over here. I'm just gonna run a wire over at 48 volts. How many amps am I gonna pull to charge a 12 volt or a 24 volt battery? A half
Right.
or a quarter? So I ran a wire, and now I put MC4 connectors on them, and I just unplug the panels at night, plug in the 48 volt battery, and I'm done.
Yeah.
Here's a funny part for you. I have 2 cables with MC4 connectors on them going to my battery bus bars at the cabin. I did it actually for a video I was doing on testing a power station running the cabin, and decided that rather than trying to plumb solar into the power station, I would just draw right off the batteries, and which were, getting solar from my charge controllers and panels. And so I'm what you just said right there, I'm going, Eric, you got 2 cables coming right off your bus bars. all I have to do is throw a charger on there to take, like you say, a DC charger to pull that 24 volts and charge that 12 volt battery up. It could be running at full charge 24/7, 365, and all I'd have to do is disconnect it when I go to throw the knife switch to engage the generator. Because what happens when you throw that knife switch is it then allows the inverter to power the 120 volt charger that's built into the generator. And what they've done is they've replaced the alternator with that charger. So when it's not running, it's just a trickle charge. But once the generator kicks on and runs, then the charger cranks up the kind of power that it needs in order to, provide that charge that it would normally, the amperage it would normally get from an alternator, it gets off of that charger. So it's a variable rate unit, basically, right? So,
And you might be able to just remove that part permanently and not even use it. I don't know if it's needed for the rest of the functionality.
it would be needed.
It is needed. Okay.
Yeah, because
because
think about it, without an alternator, when the engine starts running, you need a lot more power coming in, right? So you because engines don't run off the batteries, they run off the alternator, and so you're going to need that extra amperage coming off of something. Otherwise, it's going to be drawing too much off the battery itself. Unless you can provide an awful lot, you might need 20 or 30 amps that normally an alternator would be given, but in this case, it's got to get it from that 120 volt charger.
it would be interesting when your generator is running and charging the battery, put an amp meter on it, see how much it's actually pulling. That might,
I should do that.
That might help. The other thing too is before you put on your DC to DC charger, put in a fuse, because if that ever shorts out or the wires get shorted out, now that thinner wire that you're using that's now connected to your bus bar, that becomes a fusible link.
Right. Yeah. No, that's good advice too. Yeah. Yep. All good stuff. So yeah, I'm thinking I've got a plan here for the future.
All right, I
Currently
think we got
deciding
a between the Pectron 5000 and 6 expandable batteries and Watt Cycle 6.5 kilowatt hybrid plus all-in-one inverter with 32 kilowatt wall mount battery. Both are great deals, but tough choices. The Pectron between 6 expandable batteries and the Watt Cycle hybrid plus all-in-one inverter. So I'm going to have to say it depends on where you're good. This is my opinion, and you two can answer it also. But I'll give this a run at first. My suggestion here is, as much as we talked about the power stations having their position, having a place, the size of this system sounds like you should go with the inverter, not with the Pectron. I love these. I love these power stations for temporary, for emergency use, for small camping trips, maybe even a little bit of off-grid in your RV. But for long-term real solutions, I just don't think they're the right solution. So in my case, I would say the 6.5 kilowatt hybrid plus and the 32 kilowatts of battery, wall mount battery would be an easy solution for me, because the batteries there are expandable easily. The inverter is easily expandable. And if you decide that you want to get more inverter power, you're not looking and shopping again for new batteries that are going to be compatible with your Pectron system. That's my option. Does anyone else here have additional feedback you'd like to put into this?
Absolutely. My first thing is, why Watt Cycle? But we'll skip that for the moment. Nothing wrong with Watt Cycle, don't get me wrong. But and I'd have to look at, yeah, and I think that's what it is, and that's fine. But here's the beauty of doing that. And I'm going to tell you right off the bat, I would not go with the Pectron F5000. And I love Pectron power stations. I've had lots of great experience with Pectron power stations. I think that's a great unit for some people. But from my personal opinion, you're talking 32 kilowatt hours. You're talking about a house. And if you're talking about a house, then I'm looking at that going, number one, if the Watt Cycle failed, all you'd have to do is get another one. Maybe they send you a replacement. Maybe you buy an EG4 product. Doesn't matter, because the batteries have nothing to do with it. They'll work together, but you don't have to use Watt Cycle batteries, or you could buy XYZ batteries and the Watt Cycle unit. It doesn't matter. So on the Pectron side of things, if the head unit fails, well, now you got to get another Pectron. And what if the new Pectron doesn't use those batteries? For example, I have some Opus products, the Opus Mega 1, the Opus Mega 2 Pro, the Opus B2 battery, and an Opus Guardian 6000. And the Guardian 6000 does not use the B2 expansion battery that the other units use. It's using a new one now. So if your Pectron failed and they've changed that those batteries only work with that unit and they stop making it, now you're stuck with those batteries. So from my perspective, you're always going to be better off on a system build like this by going with what I call the do-it-yourself approach, which is the Watt Cycle hybrid. I'm guessing that's an all-in-one. I haven't looked at it myself. I know Watt Cycle started making a 12 kilowatt system a year or two ago, but you're looking at that, and you can replace that. You can add to that. You can also then, if you don't have enough solar with your Watt Cycle and you decide you want to add more solar, you can pick up a Victron charge controller or a Morningstar or an Outback or whatever you want and directly charge solar, use solar to charge those batteries separate of that hybrid inverter, because you're not restricted to just using theirs. Versus the Pectron, you can't do that. So from my perspective, if you're looking at it from this approach already, good job. You're looking in the right direction. Stick with the do-it-yourself approach.
Agreed. Mike?
So my way of looking at it, yes, I agree with everyone. Stay away from the Pectron 5000. It is a great unit. It's not going to be as expandable. It's also, once again, if the head unit goes, you're tied into a proprietary system. You're tied into that ecosystem. There is no moving from it. If, let's say, that Pecron F5000 head unit dies 3 years from now and they no longer make it, you might not be able to find a replacement, and now all those batteries are worthless. So you're really tied into something that you can't get away from. Now, the Watt Cycle 6500 watt inverter, that is actually made by SRNE, who is the company that Watt Cycle makes it for, or that Watt Cycle puts their label on it. So it is a white box, or however you want to put it, but it's they don't make it themselves. Now, SRNE does make very, very good inverters. Are they as good as the EG4? No, but they are very good inverters. It's not like some of the other ones that are, that the quality is questionable. With that being said, with the Watt Cycle or the SRNE, you are going to have limited support. So if it fails, you're not going to be able to reach out easily and get a replacement. And if you do, it's not going to be in a timely scenario. So you might be out for a month. Now, if that's your primary, setup, and you're completely off grid and you don't have grid power, you're out for a month. I would much rather see you get the EG4 12,000 XP, which is just a little bit more. And now you have double the capability, you have that growth. If you're running much lower output out of that 12,000 XP, it's going to last tremendously longer. Then I think the mistake that a lot of people make, and I kind of alluded to this before, is you add up your loads. Okay, I have 5,000 to 6,000 watts of, or let's just say, watts of load that I have. I'll get a 6,000 or 7,000 watt inverter and I'm covered. These things are not made to be run at their continuous rating, just like all electronics. You really shouldn't run it more than 80% of its maximum continuous output. And the higher that you run it, the shorter its lifespan is going to be. So get the 12,000, run it so it has an easy life, and it's going to be a lot more reliable. And you can plug whatever batteries that you want into it, and it's going to be good. You can use the Watt Cycle, you can use EG4, HumSync, whoever that you want to use, you can use that. But I agree with everyone else, stay away from the Pecron. And if support is something that you need, even though I'm an affiliate for Watt Cycle and HumSync and a lot of the other ones, if support is something that you need, stick with something like EG4 and buy it from Signature Solar and not from, someone that drop ships things. And when it comes time to support, you're going to have issues and you're going to have to work directly with EG4 instead of the reseller. EG4 has great support, but stay with your top tier retailers that ship things out. So Matt has a story on his 6,000 XP, and he had one fail, and within a few days he had a replacement sent out to him. So, that's the kind of support that you're going to want. I know with some of these other vendors, I'm getting complaints from users that are saying, hey, I've reached out to XYZ company for support and they keep ghosting me. And it's not one person, it's multiple people that are mentioning it. So that's my recommendation.
And, I want to quickly add to that. I would, you're mentioning about the support and getting replacements. I like Pecron, and I like Watt Cycle. I have affiliate programs with both of them. I've done lots of reviews of their equipment, but you could have the same issue with the Pecron. If it fails, you could be out a month. And so I would agree with that. I am, we asked the question earlier, what did you do to make your system, expandable in the future? And I mentioned that I bought that Morningstar charge controller. And I think that there are certain things that you can get away with spending a little less money on. For example, batteries. I went with golf cart batteries. Everybody else was using Trojan L16s, which were 3 to 4 or 5 times the cost. And I sat down and did the math, and I could buy 3 new sets of golf cart batteries over, like a many year period, and save money over buying 1 set of Trojan L16s. But on the other hand, I bought that Morningstar charge controller, which back in 2010, I want to say was like $750. So it wasn't cheap, right? We're talking 16 years ago, $750, big bucks. But that unit is still working today, and excellent, outstanding support. So I would concur with Mike on looking at something like that EG4. And I saw a comment in the comment section here in the chat that somebody, that it could be a month out. And while that might be true, I will tell you this: it won't take you a month to call EG or to call Signature Solar or the EG4 guys to get support. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges. I had a comment on my channel this morning that one of the companies this guy was dealing with, he was struggling to get good support with them. And my comment back was, unfortunately, all of these, I'll just say overseas companies that are currently mass producing a lot of power stations in particular, but also various off-grid components, they're all almost all that way. Maybe there are a couple that aren't, but the vast majority of their support is overseas, their build is overseas, their stocking's overseas. They ship stuff here and sell it here, but picking up the phone and getting to talk to somebody who understands you can be a challenge. And so for something as important as your main system, especially if you're going with an all-in-one inverter system, solar inverter charger, some call them hybrid inverters. I don't personally like that term because there are also charge controllers and chargers, but I'm an old component guy. So, but when you're talking something that integral and important to your system, I want to be able to pick up the phone and call somebody in the States that I can talk to that fully understands what's going on, the system I'm calling about, and can help me sort out what kind of a problem there is. If they can't get me one because they're currently not stocked, well, that always happens. But if I can talk to somebody, they might have an answer for me, and I might be able to get that answer today versus next week, Monday. So it's my 2 cents.
Yep.
So let me wrap this up, and Will, thank you so much for the super chat. Before I forget to say it, I appreciate it. But let me Mike had alluded to the story that I have with my 6000 XP, and I'll briefly tell you what that story is. For those of you who know my channel and know me, I traveled in my RV for about 22 months, pretty much off-grid. My wife loves beaches, the scenery. I was working from home. I was a tech guy, so I could work from anywhere I wanted. So I traveled from beach to beach. When the weekend came, we'd attach the fifth wheel to the back of my Ram truck, and we'd drive to a new beach. We'd spend a week wherever it happened to be. By the way, if you're interested, Texas has free beaches that you can travel for about 2 months and hit just free beach after free beach after free beach, just dumping your tanks between. Excellent. But you have to have power. You have to be completely self-contained. So I had a 6000 XP in my RV. I had 3 EG4 batteries, and then I had added a DIY 16 kilowatt battery also. So I had about 30 kilowatts of the 6000 XP in my RV and 3,700 watts of solar panels on the roof. I stripped off all my air conditioners, put in mini splits and the whole thing. We loved it. My wife was very much like Mike's wife. Look, you can do this, but don't involve me. The system has to work like the system worked before you did it. And so that was basically what we did, is we hit beach after beach. Now, I, at one point, and I'll tell anybody I'm doing a review for, it's very, very common to me. Look, if I find something wrong with your product, if it's defective, if it's broken, that's not a problem. It's always going to happen. People can't manufacture 100%. What I tell them, though, what is important is how you respond when I have a problem. What do you say when I tell you this is broken? How do you give me support? What do you do when something's defective? How are you going to handle your warranty a year from now? And I can tell you from my experience with 6000 XP, one day I woke up, all my chargers were off. It had clicked off, I'd gotten an error. Not only did Signature Solar have me on the phone an hour later, they brought an EG4 rep with them. The EG4 and them, I recorded a couple of videos, and then they said, we'll ship you a new unit. And I said, look, I'm on the road. I have no other source of power. I need it right now. They said, you know what? Instead of you shipping back the old unit and us shipping a new one, we will overnight you a unit right now. They overnighted me a unit, and I shipped my unit back after that. I was up and running 24 hours later. There's a video about it in my thing. The support, I can tell you, bar none, nobody ever on any of my other affiliates, I don't know about you guys, have ever even usually respond to emails that quick, let alone get me a unit in hand to install. So that's what sold me on EG4 and Signature Solar, and then being here in the US, answering from Texas, nice central zone calls. So
I'm going to throw this out there real quick because you asked. And I don't want to beat up everybody's support, but US based support or companies really do make a difference. I mentioned earlier that I have talked to Big Battery. I think that's because I've got 3 Big Battery mules, which are kind of pre the battery, craziness that went on, where 120 amp hour, 24 volt lithium iron phosphate battery is, a few $100. I bought them when they were $1,200 a battery. And to this day, I know that if I call up Big Battery, they're there. And I have had some issue with those batteries. And at one point they sent me out some new components for them. They didn't work, and I did a video about that. But the beauty is, every time I've reached out to them, they've been there for me. Now I know I can get them fixed. Unfortunately, I'd have to ship them back to Big Battery, and I don't feel like shipping 80-pound batteries back to them, and they work just fine without the screens, which is the only thing that's the problem with them. So I decided to forget it and just move on. And it's a discontinued older battery. I mean, these are not new. But just to kind of reiterate that, and my camera is obviously not working very well. I just realized I look really blurry. But, having that US support makes all the difference in the world. So anyway, there you go. And nobody mentioned that I got all blurry.
Good. Your
It's
audio
like,
sounds good, so don't worry about it.
right? I'll just be the blurry guy.
I think it's light. I think it's just a slack, a tiny. There it went. Whatever you did just fixed it.
There it went. Now it's clear.
Okay, perfect. I sat
All
forward.
right, Will, thank you very much. I think I have fireworks. Let's see if they work this week. Oh, yeah, they do, except I got to get rid of this. There we go. Oh, no. I don't have fireworks. I thought I did. I don't. Oh, I see what it is. There we go. Fireworks. Thank you for the super. All right. Let's move on. Were there any other questions in here? Oh my goodness, there's a whole bunch of chat. We'll have to look through those as we answer the next question. So let's move on to the next question, and then we'll come back. All right, so have any of us, and look, it's obvious that we've been going for 1 hour and 20 minutes already, and I have no problem. I will go until my voice is gone. So you guys, whenever you get to the point where you've had enough, please let me know. Have any of us already had to buy something twice that we didn't anticipate where our system was eventually going? I know for me, and I'll start this one this time around instead of ending it, since I just finished the last one. Well, now my screens aren't working. There they are. So for me, the thing that I bought here that really was the problematic for me. Geez, I can't get these screens to work. Sorry, guys. So for me, the big purchase that I had to make twice is going to end up being the inverter. I'm going to end up bouncing to a larger inverter because I don't want to run dual or triple 6,000 XPs to power my whole house. I'm going to have to either go to the 12,000 XP or potentially test some other inverter. I've used the LZ Power for some testing and stuff, which is also an SRNE knockoff battery, white label, black label, whatever you want to call it. which is a good inverter, but it doesn't have the core functionality that I like in the 6000 XP, the AC coupling and stuff. And as you know, I've got a traditional grid tied solar edge system on my house that when the grid goes down, I lose it. But I've got 13 kilowatts of solar panels up there, and I want access to those when the grid goes down. I want access to those when the next hurricane hits. I want to look at my system and say I can run anything. So that's going to be my big one there. Of course, other things, batteries, I was pretty good. I started with 48-volt batteries, so I won't have to rebuy any of those. I started with my 6000 XP in my RV, so in my RV I'm good. That's really solid. It's just in my home base system. I kind of thought that it would be easy to do that now, because, and I don't think this is as much of my mistake as it really was just the industry transitioning to bigger devices, nicer devices. The 12,000 XP, if I remember correctly, when I bought those a few years back, we were looking at the 12,000 XP was in excess of $3,000, if I remember correctly. And now it's what, $1,899, I think, and the 6,000 is $1,500. I mean, there's like a $300 or $400 difference for twice the power and 3 times the PV. So that's going to be mine. Who else would like to answer? Talk a little bit about some of your screw ups. Oh,
So there's a few of them.
There we
Oh,
go.
go ahead, Eric.
Sorry, I had my mic on mute, so that doesn't help.
Oh, I thought the audio had gone out, so I'm glad that wasn't the audio going out. I was
That's
like,
the
oh,
old
crap, now
Jarhead's
he's lost
brain.
audio.
It's just the old Jarhead's brain that's gone out. But I wanted to answer Donald Hudek, I think is your last name. You asked if I had remote access to my cabin's electronics. No, I don't. But as for buying things, if I remember your question, buying things that you had to replace or upgrade, is that right? Because
Yes,
does my whole system count?
NES already had to buy something twice because we didn't anticipate our system was eventually going where it was eventually going.
Yeah. So I'll try to make this quick. My whole system. No, when I started out, I started out with the intent to have a system that would work pretty well for weekend use. And I started out with a 12-volt system. And I put in 615 watts of solar. That was going to be awesome. And then I put it 50 feet away from my cabin, which is really too far from a voltage drop perspective if you're running the panels in parallel, because they were 18.5 volts approximately per panel. So I put them in series with a PWM controller and then realized that doesn't really work. So I had to buy that Morningstar MPPT that could take all of that voltage and convert that correctly and not just shed everything above 18.5. And I had a modified sine wave inverter or square wave inverter and a battery charger, and wasn't too long. I guess 3 years later, I upgraded to 24 volts, just reconfigured the battery bank. But I started with 6 batteries, got to 8 batteries, ended up at 12 batteries. So if you want to know where my experience comes from outside of telecommunications, it's from making a lot of mistakes, frankly. But so I've replaced my initial inverter, my initial charge controller. I've replaced my entire battery bank two times. I scrapped 12 volts and went to 24 volts, and I would scrap 24 and go to 48 today if I found the right setup to do it, because I have some little challenges that I mentioned earlier. But so from a replacement standpoint, I would say that's the only things. I will say that there was something I didn't mention earlier. We were talking about things that you did that could facilitate adding more later. And one of the things I did when I built my system, which I don't see a lot today, is I didn't just put in combiner boxes. I also put in a main disconnect. So I have a Midnight Solar main disconnect panel where my shunt lives, where breakers for my charge controllers live, where my main battery disconnect lives, and none of that has changed. So the combiner boxes, the main disconnect, all that kind of stuff is still the original stuff that I had when it was 12 volts. And the only thing now I would say is that the main disconnect, I think it's a 250 amp disconnect, probably is a little big for what I'm doing. And if I go to 48 volts, it'll definitely be too big, and I could, shrink that down a little bit. But anyway, there you have it. We've replaced everything. That's my answer.
That's your answer. Well, we'll see what Mike's got to say. This one's got me all curious, Mike, seeing your wall behind you, because you do such a beautiful job of mounting everything. I'm anxious to hear what you had to tear down and put back up.
So there's quite a few things I would have done. Well, things that I'd replaced that essentially had to do twice. The first one was fuses. I had I wasn't using T-class fuses when I first started on my shop system, and that's something I didn't really understand as far as the IC rating and what that meant as far as, being able to quench, that arc if you had some sort of an emergency happen. So I had to buy fuses twice. Had to purchase thicker wire because initially what I put it on there, it was based on what I thought the system would need, not what the system was rated for. So for example, for the 12,000 XPs, you need to have a pair of 2-aught cable or a single 4-aught cable. And I think I started with 2-gauge cable. And I should have went with what the proper cable was. Doing 24-volt batteries in series parallel configuration to make 48 volts. Just put together a video. I'll be releasing that out on why that's a horrible idea. If you have a 48-volt system, use 48-volt batteries. Otherwise, you're going to have drift, and that's something that that I learned. Now, if you have lead acid batteries, it's a completely different story because you're already aware of the drift. You already know that, how to keep them topped off. And I think that's something that's well known. Whereas with LFPs, if you start putting those in series, you're going to have the drift, but also you're going to have battery bricking, because once they drift enough and then your battery bank gets low, you then brick a battery and it's not coming back on because the cells got to critically low levels. So there's quite a few things, and I agree with with both Matt and Eric, especially Eric's comment that is, when you look at these things, just kind of design it as well as you can, because you want to make sure that you have all your bases covered. So and it sounds like that Eric's got a very nice system that he built. Obviously, if he's still using components that are 10 plus years old, he did a great job with it. It fit the needs that he had. So that's that's a really good thing. But yeah, those were the main things that I came across. Thankfully, on my home system, I didn't make as many mistakes as I had made on my shop system. But even with those, a lot of changes I'm going to be making, which is putting everything in conduit and redoing how my batteries are set up, and just a whole bunch of other things. It'll be pretty cool once it's done. I think it'll be a massive improvement. Rapid shutdown, you name it, all that's going to be configured and set up. So
I should tell you, first, thanks for the kind words, but the truth of the matter is, if it weren't for guys online talking about how they built their systems and the mistakes they made, I would never have even known about the companies that I ended up using. And it was because of that I learned about companies like Morningstar and Midnight Solar and Outback, which, I've mentioned those guys a lot, and they're just not, you don't hear about them today, even though I think they're all still around. But they're not they're not the kind of the popular online. They're not blue in color, so you know you don't hear about them a lot. But the truth of the matter is, if it weren't for the guys online that were talking about the stuff they did, the mistakes they made, the systems they used, and what they found worked really, really well, then I wouldn't have known, frankly. And even though I worked in telecommunications and we had battery backup systems, our systems were completely different. Yeah, you know, the principles are all the same, but the equipment was very different. And so it's thanks to, frankly, guys like the three of us here now, that are willing to get out there and tell you what they did. It's thanks to them that I was able to build a system that has done very well for me. And yeah, I've made my mistakes. I've learned the hard way, and that is something that I would tell everybody to be prepared for. If you start building your own system, you know, not too many people, you know, I think get it perfectly right the first time. But if you learn a bunch first, ask all the right questions, get out there and ask the dumb questions too, because frankly, there are none, right? And you've heard that. It's cliche. There's no dumb questions. Well, there really aren't. If you don't understand something and you don't ask, then you can't learn it. So you got to ask those questions. And that's one of the reasons why I always try to answer questions in the comments on my channel. As long as I can keep up, I try to do that. And that is because I know that I was that guy back in 2009, 2010, when I was trying to figure out how to build my system. I didn't know, you know, didn't really know much about inverters. I didn't know much about charge controllers. In fact, I knew nothing about charge controllers. I'd played with something I bought from Costco, you know, in 09, the old 60-watt Costco system. And it was asking those questions. Hey guys, you know, what is this? How is this system working? What are you doing here? And it helps a lot. But I will tell you this: if you don't understand basic electronics, find an online course. Take an online course. Take something. Learn a little bit about basic electronics, because I think that's probably really fundamental. And a lot of people maybe forgot it from when they went to school, or it just wasn't something they really got into. But I did something recently on one of my videos, and I said, if you can jump start a car, you can do this. And I stick by that. If you understand electronics well enough to jumpstart a car, you can start figuring out how to build your own off-grid system, frankly.
All right, so I got a couple of things. I'm gonna have to start making notes between you guys talking so I can remember everything I wanted to touch points on. So first one is, I want to make sure I get this out. I just posted a link to a free solar class that I'm giving away. I charge for it traditionally outside of YouTube and Facebook, but I want to give this to you guys. It will show you how, walk you through step by step. And it says there's an error. Did it not post? Well, let's try it again. Don't know what's going on with that, but there it goes. All right, so you can sign up. It's totally free. It will walk you through every step by step, if that's what he's referring to. There are other classes online that are much more basic and everything, but since he mentioned it, I'm going to go ahead and do it here. I've posted it a couple times on Facebook, so I figure you guys deserve it also. And I think I gave it away at last live stream also. I just put another 100 copies of the class out there for free. Let me give you 2 examples of systems, and you two were talking, and it made me realize 2 big blunders I made when I got started. And one, I guarantee at least one other person on this live stream has ran into already, may or may not already know about it. When I first started building my solar system, I ordered a whole bunch of parts. I ordered my 6000. As you know, it was for my RV. I ordered a 6000. I ordered 3 batteries. I ordered a bunch of wires and connectors and lug connectors and everything. And when the wire came in, like Mike, I had ordered some 2-gauge wire. And I realized 2-gauge wire isn't going to be able to support the 6000 XP. And I thought, okay, well, I'll reorder some wire. I'll go with 1/aught. And so I went out to Amazon. I shopped around. I found some good 1/aught wire. I ordered it. It came in. I got it all trimmed, cut, all the lugs on and everything. And then I noticed on the side of it, it said CCA. And I'm thinking, CCA, what the hell does that mean? And what it means is it's copper-clad aluminum wire. In other words, it is not copper. And they start the phrase on Amazon with copper-clad. They start it with copper wire. And in the corner, they'll say CCA. pay very close attention. This is not copper wire. It does not support the same amperage that you get from copper wire, and it is not advisable that you use this if you have any choice. Now, I've ended up using it, but it's degraded very, very much. I use it for test systems and temporary systems, and I do not put it on permanent systems anywhere. So that was one thing that I ended up buying 3 times, actually, but not because I didn't know where the system was going. My example of where I didn't know where the system was going is when my wife's food trailer, we used to go and do a bunch of fairs. And she needed the refrigerator and the freezers to run overnight, so because a lot of the fairs don't have power overnight. They shut the generators down. So I built a little solar system for her freezer to run, her refrigerator and her freezer to run overnight. I put a couple panels on the top and everything, and it worked great. It was a small 100 amp hour, 24 volt, 2000 watt solar system. Worked perfectly. For those of you who's watched my channel, I recently installed a pair of 3000 EHVs that were paralleled with 6000 watts because we decided that once we realized we could run off grid, it is so convenient not to have a generator. And it's basically $50 worth of gas every day that she operates now without a generator. So it paid for itself very, very quickly because you go to a fair, you may be there for, let's say, 2 weeks, and they charge you a grid connection fee. They charge you for your power every day and everything. And not to mention, even if they don't charge you, you don't have power overnight in most cases, or you pay extra for it. So now she can go to these shows. She can run her entire system completely off grid. I can drop rack mount batteries in as many as she needs. If she's just going for a couple hours, I can throw 2 batteries in there. If she's going for, a couple of days, I can throw 4 or 5 in there. And it can trickle charge off 120 volts from a grid power that they do have when it's on. Big savings for her. So that was something I completely and totally didn't foresee where it was going, and had to rebuy all of it, which made for some great videos, but not necessarily ideal. So, all right, let's answer some questions. What do you guys say?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, let me switch the view here to this one here. And last few seconds to answer the poll. Enter 1 in the comments for yes, you've replaced something already. 2 if you haven't. Don't look like we have a whole lot of participation in the polls today. What are you people, sleeping? All right. All right, let me go back a little bit. Let's see. Great live stream from Bamba. Thank you, Bamba.
There's a good question you'll see from Sleem Solar. Starts with QQQ. What's the panels?
There we go. Is that the one?
Yep.
QQQ. What's the panel's take on FCC banning foreign power inverters? Do you think that will affect a lot of smaller resellers and stuff? It's funny you should mention this. I think it was a few weeks ago Mike mentioned this to me, and then I ended up making a video that night that did really well. My personal opinion is that a lot of the solar companies are going to respond to this pretty quickly, and they'll probably lull in inventory over the next couple of months, but then they'll start to get that through the pipeline and get things resolved. I hope that's what happens. I haven't heard any recent news on it. Has anyone heard any recent news on it?
Well, I haven't heard recent news, but it's my understanding that it was for actually big grid systems, not the small home power inverter type systems.
The intent of the law, as I read it, stated that it was specifically designed for those systems that will allow automatic updates and feed the grid. The problem was the way it was written, it didn't only cover those. They were very open-ended rules. So it basically came down to any system that can be updated from a foreign entity is a problem. That's what it really came down to.
Right.
That's where I think a lot of the panic is.
So I've got a interesting and maybe a different way of looking at this. I actually think in a way it's a good thing. Let me explain why. Is it going to affect new models of inverters coming out? Absolutely. But the existing ones are going to continue. So the 12,000 XP, they're going to keep creating 12,000 XPs, and all these other, inverters that we're used to, they're going to keep creating them. Why is that important? Well, let's just say that you have an inverter and a battery that are UL 9540 tested, and that is needed, okay? And you have your system set up, you have your batteries, you have your inverter. They discontinue the inverter, just age it out to come out with a new model. Well, now that new model may not have UL 9540 with your batteries. Now it's not a UL 9540 system. Now all of a sudden it doesn't meet NEC code because you can't get that inverter that you used to have because it's going to be replaced with a different model that may no longer exist. So in a way, it keeps the manufacturers to extend the life of their existing product line, which for all of us, if we have inverters already and they fail, we're going to be able to get the warranty work and we'll get the exact same inverter instead of maybe a different model that came out. So it's going to kind of slow down the life cycle. So that's a positive. The other thing too is it's going to force companies to have to use components in the US. I believe it needs to be 65% of the materials need to be from the US. So it's going to move the supply chain back into the US, which I think ultimately there's some positives to that. I think EG4 is already doing that. They kind of, jumped the gun compared to a lot of other companies. Some of the other ones are going to try to catch up. What's going to happen to SRNE, all the clones, and a lot of the other ones, I don't know. Whatever they have existing, they can keep, they'll keep out there, but they're not going to be able to keep switching inverters as quickly as they've been going through them, because you'll see one company and that company disappears, and then another company is opened back up, which could be the same parent company, and that's there, and they keep on doing this over. You can't do that no more. And now it's saying you're going to have to make it in the US, which it could have some positive. Now, the negatives everybody's focusing on because you have to jump through hoops to come out with a new type of inverter. And maybe that would hurt a EG4 12000 XP V3 if a V3 was to come out, because now it has to be certified in 65% content and all that. But the interest to me, I think in a way it has some positives to it and not just the negatives.
I think you're absolutely right. I think it has some positives, but I think Eric is also right. The original intent
before you continue, what was your poll question? Because one of the things that I forgot to mention about doing these roundtables is that we actually each have to put those polls up on our own channels. And I was like, oh crap, here. I didn't put it up for you. So let me put it up for my guys to answer here. Because if they join from Mike's channel or mine, yeah, there you go. Have you repulsed anything yourself? That's okay. I'll get that. Have you replaced anything yourself? Okay, 1 second, guys. Replaced anything yourself? There you go. And then Mike, if you want to,
I only have 3 spelling mistakes in 5 words.
That's okay. So Mike, if you want to have any of your guys answer the poll, you have to go into your own YouTube. You have to go look at this live on your YouTube channel to put it up. It's the same way you give away memberships. If you do memberships, you actually have to skip over to another tab where you can watch your own live stream and do it there. I wish you could do it in StreamYard, but you can't. But for those guys that asked, so Curmudgeon and the gang, I have gone ahead and put that poll up for everyone as well on my side.
So for me, I don't have memberships right now, and I think putting up the poll might be a little too complicated for me, switching back and forth, so I'm not going to try it.
Well, I know we're getting a little off topic, so I need to let Matt go back to his point, but I used to do these all the time, and for those that don't know me, you might find this a little amusing, but I used to do it on a sawmill roundtable. So when I said I did sawmilling, I'm not kidding.
All right. I don't know where we were. I don't remember where we were.
FCC, inverters, whether it was going to affect the small time, off grid inverter stuff. And then Mike was
Oh yeah.
talking about what he learned.
And I was gonna back up what you said. The way I read it, the intent really was focused on these giant solar farms being able to bring down our grid. It didn't look like it was focused on, other than bringing back some of the supply lines and stuff. I think it was more focused on, you go out to one of these solar grids, and if it's providing 2 or 3 megawatts of power to an area, and they can do a simple uh, firmware upgrade and bring down our entire grid automatically. That was where I see the real risk here. That's where I see the real problem being. Now, whether or not they fine tune that thing to alleviate some of us, but I'm with Mike. I think that it's going to end up being a good thing for us. It's just a matter of giving these companies time. It'll be interesting to see who responds first publicly to it. Who will be the first company to come out and say, "Oh, well, we're in compliance with the new law. We can release now." Because some of the ones that I had in my original list that were already compliant ended up not being compliant, not being as much, or all of their manufacturing wasn't done here, where they had plants here, but only 10% of what was supplied here came from those plants. So should be interesting. All
Well,
right.
and I wanted to quickly add to that I actually think it's a good thing. So, I think we can talk about what we think may or may not happen, but I do think that overall, from a grid protecting perspective, I think it's naive to think that somebody maybe wouldn't act nefariously, and it actually has happened, and that's why the law was kind of rushed in. And look, I'm not a big government guy. I don't like government for the most part. I think you need some. I'm more of a small government kind of individual, but I do think that if a foreign entity can shut down your grid, which has happened actually, yeah, it's probably a good idea to make it so they can't. So
I'm with you. I'm not a big government guy, but when it comes to protecting what our country from another government, then that's what they're there for.
Right.
Let them do it.
Right. Exactly. That's the point of that.
Yeah.
I don't need them to tell me what I can eat or drink, though.
Oh, agreed. The interesting thing when it comes to it, any of the products that have, that's public facing, that you access from the web. So my background and what I do is I manage the cybersecurity team. So pretty much anything can be hacked. You can find zero-day exploit. There's been 4 different AIs that have broken out of sandboxes within the last 6 to 8 weeks and attacked other companies. Found zero-day exploits. They were able to break in. So having anything online, if it's based in the US or it's based somewhere else, anything can be hacked, number one. Number two, when it comes to critical infrastructure, we have so many things that are online with that could be accessible if you were able to find it through Shodan or something else. And essentially with that, yeah, we need to protect our infrastructure, because you have to worry about things like dams and water treatment facilities, and a lot of things that they just work. Having bridges that
Cascading
open and close when you
catastrophic
want them
events.
to happen.
Yeah.
So those are things that the government should definitely worry about. And so I get it, kind of bringing us back to inverters. I get it. And for people that are worried about their inverters, to be honest, pull the dongles. They function perfectly fine. A lot of folks, they'll use, third-party software to kind of monitor it so it doesn't go external, which is perfectly fine. I believe that Matt does that with his setup. The other thing too that you can do is just, if you built the system and you have enough capacity and everything is nice and smooth and well thought out, you can pull your dongles and not even think about it. I think Will Prowse said the way to judge a system is, do you have to think about it? If you have to think about the system, you have to constantly watch the system and look at this and look at this and tweak this and tweak that, then it's probably not reliable enough. If you can set it up to where you don't even...
I call that set and forget.
Yes.
That
Yes.
forget.
If you can get it to that level, that's a system. And even mine, I'm not there yet.
Yeah,
And
I'm
we're
gonna tell
talking
you
about
this.
actually having to monitor it and watch it to keep it running, not for the
Yeah,
fun of it, because we're all
yeah,
guilty
yeah.
of for the fun of it.
Well, I don't even do it for the fun of it. Mine's been set and
But,
forget for so long. As long as I could
but
flip the switch when I want to, I don't even pay. People ask me, how many kilowatt hours are you producing a month? And I go, I don't know. I turn the switch on. That's it. I walk away. But I was going to tell you, if 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 somebody can hack my system, then we all need to start looking for T1000s because my system is more air gapped than
3 to 4 years, unfortunately.
right. Maybe. Yeah. I've seen some of the stuff that's out there today, but you mentioned pulling the dongles, and I'm sitting over here chuckling to myself, going, yeah, good luck with that. There are none. Somebody asked earlier if I could remotely monitor my system. The only way you can remotely monitor my system is if you drive 5 hours to get up there and then walked into the room and looked at it. Although I do have a Bluetooth module on one of my charge controllers that I can sometimes reach from certain spots inside the cabin. But if I'm just a few feet too far away, then I can't. But the truth is, it was a curiosity thing when I put it in, because I really truly believe in set and forget. I know a lot of people monitor everything there. I mean, once it's up and running, I got other things to do. And
Yeah.
so I don't it's set and forget for me. Plug it in, move on, go do something else. I just want to be able to run my power.
For me, I check out my shop at least once a day to make sure that the HVAC is working. And what I'm going to put on is a redundant mini split. So that way in my battery room and inverters, if that fails for some reason, I have my my backup. But yeah, if you build things right, and for you, it might be a Wi-Fi camera that looks inside your cabin, and you have a little thermometer that's digital that it looks at that in the rest of the room. Okay, the
Let me ask you
temperature
a
is this.
question. Let me ask you a
The
question.
system looks good.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
How are you going to do that? There's no cell coverage. I guess if you put in a satellite system,
Starlink.
Oh,
there's
you
no
have no cell coverage. Ah, okay.
none. I do have
Got it.
Starlink. So I carry a Starlink mobile, and
Okay.
when I'm at the cabin, I set that up when I'm there. But then I keep it with me because I do some overlanding and RVing and traveling and whatever, and so I have my Starlink with me wherever I go. But yeah, no, when I'm not there, there's nothing. The closest I have to monitoring my system is sending a message to my neighbor who has internet, and he could walk over there and make sure it's not burning to the ground or something. But I mean, he's his walk over there is uphill and probably close to about a quarter mile, to walk over to me. That's
Mm.
and there's no other neighbors within half a mile to a mile of me that could, that I know well enough that I'd even consider sending over there. So yeah, there's no monitoring my system. There isn't even a phantom bit of a bar of cell coverage where my system is.
See, I'm just the opposite. So here's mine actively right now, today,
Yeah,
this month,
it's
this
cool.
moment. But for me, it's just it's a this is a toy. It's here to build it, and I use this as an excuse not to make my system look as nice as Mike's looks. This is my excuse. All my stuff is temporary. I'm just playing around with it, and I have to tear it down and build something new. Otherwise, I have to live up to Mike's standards, and I'm not sure I can do that.
I don't
But
think I have a
okay.
standard. I'm just looking at everybody else on YouTube and trying to do what they're doing.
It's
So
it's a real challenging balancing act for me, because The fact is that a lot of the times I want to take the time to put all the conduit in and to put the boxes in and stuff like that. But then I'm like looking out to next month and knowing, okay, well, next month I'm going to do this. And that basically means ripping all that out and putting this in. So like
That's
right
the
now I'm
problem.
facing
I was going to say
Right
that's
now,
the
I'm facing, I
problem.
want to pull my 10 kilowatt one out and I want to build just like a home backup system, nothing else. Just get rid of all the extra batteries and everything. Just a, hey, here's a, $5,000 or $4,000 home backup. You just plug it in like a generator and it does the thing. But that means that I have to take apart what I have. I need to build a special wall for it. And that's what I want to do. Now, the problem becomes with me is balancing how much of that um, do I do I take the time to put all those beautifying pieces in when you're just going to rip them out? And a lot of times it's expensive to do it too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's my problem with my off-grid shop build. I started an off-grid shop build and tore it apart so many times for making videos that sometimes people will come in and say, "Oh, what are you building there?" And I'm like, "Well, I was building this, but then I was building that, but then I built this, and then I built that." And the beautifying thing, it's true, right? Because I often make videos based on questions. Somebody, viewers ask questions,
Very
and I want to
common.
answer those questions. And
Yeah.
so a lot of times I'll look at that and well, okay, let me do this. So then I'll tear that system apart because I need some of those components because I don't have deep pockets. So I need components to build this. So then I'll take them and I'll move them where my studio is, which actually used to be a planing and sanding room. That's kind of a funny story, but in any case, and then I'll build a system there. And what I really get a crack up is the guys that come in and make comments about, I don't think you should build that with that there or something, and I'm thinking, well, I wouldn't, but I'm trying to show you how to build one. So I'll screw these
Yeah.
down here and slap this over here, and let me plug this in right here. Look, it works. But I've taken up
Yeah.
saying there's a channel I watch called Ambition Strikes. If you haven't seen them, they're
I
a fun
love
channel to
Ambition
watch.
Strikes.
Yeah, great. And
Yeah.
they're not too far from me, actually. I mean, they're probably about 3 hours from me, but and he always says this is a what I'm doing channel, and I've started to try and mimic that because I realize, okay, I can show you how to do something, but I'm not going to build a pristine perfect. First of all, don't ask me to build pristine anything because I'm not that. I am the bull in the china shop. In the telecommunications world, I did a lot of R&D stuff and I was really good at it, but you did not want to have me come in and build your permanent system because when it come to lacing cables, yes, I could lace cables. I was not the guy that did that perfect cable run through the whole central office. But I was the guy that would say, well, let me see if I took A and I attached it to B and I plugged in C, I wonder if that'd work. Oh, look, it worked. Or, well, that didn't work out. you know,
Yeah.
but so anyway, I mean, to your comment about building systems and rebuilding, and I was telling my wife today, I said, I need to build the closet around where I'm going to do my off-grid shop build to keep the sawdust off of it so that when I actually want to do some woodworking, I don't cover my components in sawdust, which happens. And then permanently put that there. And I guess I have to get to that point where I say, okay, Eric, look, you're done. You're not taking anything. I have Hardy backer board on the wall that must have 50 holes in it because I've screwed things into it and pulled them off and screwed things in and pulled. And I'm like, I'm gonna have to take that off and put a new piece up and rebuild the whole thing. And then it better stay that way in the future. So for those that watch me, they may have noticed that I've been using my hump sink batteries a lot for battery expansion or power station expansion videos. That's because I've decided that I should not try to add those to the other setup, and I should just leave that setup alone so that maybe I could get back to that shop build. But I'm even looking at it today where I've got 1600 watts of solar set up right now that's going into a power station that I'm testing. That's supposed to actually go to my off-grid shop build, but it's not. you know So YouTuber problems is what that is.
I'll second that. I've got a funny one right now. So I've got a HumSync 10,000 watt inverter that I'm testing. So get it in, start to do the testing. I'm looking at this and I'm like, oh, great. It doesn't have any of the breakers that I need. Okay, let's pick up breakers. Look at the wiring. Oh, yeah, it doesn't fit 4 gauge, 2 gauge, any gauge that I have. All right, so it's 6 gauge. Okay, let me get 6 gauge. So I'm getting the wire for that, and I've got to wire that in. And then, oh, yeah, I need to have the battery cable. Need to get that. And then I got to get a T-class. And I'm looking at this, and I'm like, damn it, I'm going to have $300 into this review. And I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. This is going to be the
I've got this. I've got this giant box. I got this giant box. It started off as a couple of spools of wire, and every review and every build, the wire strips get a little shorter and a little shorter and a little shorter, and they all have different connectors on the end. And I'm always afraid that I'm going to take that 5/8 inch lug and a 3/8 inch lug and put, have it to where somebody says, well, that doesn't fit. Why did you use the wrong size lug? Or
right.
Yeah.
What's this copper clad wiring here for? Or why don't this build have a party board on the back? Or my favorite one lately is I got those new panels in. And one of the first things I wanted to do was compare the old used panels that were laying against the fence to the brand new, quote, bifacial panels that are now leaning against the fence. Oh my God. You'd think I set the world on fire. Why did you mount those bifacial panels against the fence like that? You're not going to get your bifacial gains. Oh my God, you don't know what you're doing, and blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, guys, it was just a video to see what would happen, to see how it works.
Yeah. I love those. Sometimes I try to answer every comment, but I have to admit there are, and I hope all of you out there watching this today appreciate this, because you're getting a full inside view. But I try to answer every comment. It's a policy of mine to absolutely answer all of them, at least the initial comment. It's after thousands and thousands of comments. It does get hard sometimes answering all the replies, but you get comments sometimes that are, it's like, kind of like, to put it short, it'd be like, hey, dummy, you don't know what you're doing, because that's not how you do stuff, and you're like, okay. Or my favorite ones are the early ones where you've spent countless hours, because it takes a lot of time, especially if you build something so that you can show people how to build something, and then you've done it more than once, so you build them and put them together and change things and move things around, and you get it all up and running, and you film it. But and it might be an hour's worth of work filming it alone, to cut it down to a 10-minute video. And in that video, maybe you say something very specific. Like, for example, I'm using a Victron 150/35 charge controller. And then you get a comment from the picture, the thumbnail of the video. Why didn't you put in a charge controller? You're like, did you watch the video? Those are my favorites.
My biggest one, the funniest one that gets me, and I've just learned to live with it. It happens, and I know it happens to especially a lot of people that are new in the industry and stuff. And it still, to this day, I have re-recorded countless hours to fix this problem, or voiceovered and spent 20 minutes editing things to get it to sound just right. Where I'll say, and this new battery that's 10 kilowatts. Instead of 10 kilowatt hours, oh my God, how many feedbacks will you get? Oh, you don't know what you're talking about, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, it just comes out.
It's true. It's funny. I have a friend who has a YouTube channel in the forestry world, and he's done a fantastic job of making fun of himself saying things wrong on his videos. He doesn't edit them out. I try to edit them out, because I think when you're doing more technical videos, you try to get it right. But I was doing one the other day where, in fact, I think it's my video that's new yesterday, but where I think I was trying to say something like condition, but for some reason I was saying something else, like I can't even think of it right now, but another word. It wasn't the right word, but it got stuck in my head. And so, and I actually, I even resaid the whole thing.
We
Right.
recorded
And
one
then,
7 times last week and still didn't have one that was right.
and I'm sitting there editing away, and I went, really? Like you
Yes,
did it
really.
again. So I
So
just,
I
I cut it out. Just went snip, throw that part of the video away.
I just had one that I just recorded, and this is for an eco-worthy 314 amp hour battery. When I was talking with eco-worthy, it's supposed to be a 300. So in the brain, 300. And I'm thinking it's a 300 that I'm reviewing. And I'm going through the whole thing, and I'm unboxed, and I'm going through it, and it's a 314. They sent me a 314. I had already done the intro. I'd already recorded the whole thing. It's together, and I'm looking at it. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to put text at the bottom after I say 300, 314 amp hour. Good enough. All right, package it together.
I've
I
done
had
that
exactly the
countless
same thing. Big Battery sent me theirs, and the specs on the website was a 314, and I'm reading 314. And then when we're talking, they're like, "Oh, well, we have these 280s. Do you want that?" I'm like, "I don't care which one it is. I just want a big battery from an American-made company. That's what I want." And they're like, "Okay, well, we'll send you this one." I'm like, "Great, that's fine. We'll take care of that." And I do the review, I do the recording, I get everything done, all the packaging's finished. It releases tomorrow morning, and everywhere, 15 point blah 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 kilowatt hours. I'm like, this isn't a 15 kilowatt battery. It's 14.3. What the hell have I done?
and
It's
you're gonna get
wrong
hammered over
everywhere. I
that.
said it wrong. I packaged it wrong. My thumbnail's wrong. My links are wrong. Everything.
I will tell you. I'll admit something here. Another little insider for you. I will often, if I'm going to do an unboxing, which is very rare for me, I don't like to do reviews, frankly. I do them, but I always, as I've told my audience, I always have a reason for doing a review. For example, if I review an inverter, it's actually because I want to do something else with that inverter that might let the magic smoke out. And so I do the review first so that the company will send it to me so I can then let the magic smoke out. But one of the things I've taken to doing is if I'm going to do an unboxing, I will actually do that first. And so I will turn the camera on and I will pull it out of the box, look at it, talk about it, go through the specs, that kind of thing. Then shut the camera off, move it out of my way, and do the intros and the outros afterwards, because I've run into that kind of thing so many times where I've realized you just don't really know, and sometimes it's easier to do that part first. Or one of my examples would be, I'm known for doing a lot of power station hacks, and for me those are unscripted. And so but I know that I need to introduce what I'm doing at some point and explain it all at some point. But my usual method of doing that is actually skipping all of that, going straight to the hack, doing the hack itself and getting it completely done, and then going back and doing the intro. So, when you watch the video, it looks like I sit down and I'm going to say I'm going to go do something, and then I go do it, but it's usually the other way around. And it's just because of that kind of thing, where it's just sometimes easier to try and do it that way. Because I've done it. We've all done it, obviously, countless times, where you think you're going to do one thing and then you find out later it's not.
Yeah.
And hey, on YouTube, everybody knows you're supposed to do the title and the thumbnail before you ever do the video.
Uh-huh.
So
Who
you
does
do
that?
I do. I do it before, and then I go back and fix it after.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Oh, good Lord. There were some good. I did see a question or two in there, so I should let you get back to going through
All
those,
right,
because I did
let's
see
answer a
some.
couple questions real quick. I'm just going to go through some of the QQQs. If you've got a question, just put in a QQQ. I've probably missed it, but I'll get to the ones that are labeled QQQ. So here we have, what do you think about low frequency inverters? I honestly don't have an opinion one way or another. I know the high frequencies have a tendency to not be as robust on the big surges and stuff like that. But to be honest, I don't think the technology is so far behind now as it was originally. Um, I
Well,
know,
I have
Eric,
lots
you
of
have.
experience there. I will tell you that the going back 10 or 12 years or 15 years, the pure sine wave inverters, pure sine wave inverters definitely did not have the capacity to peak at the potential draw that induction loads or startup loads could require. And that actually is the case today. If you look at most high frequency inverters, which is almost every inverter you're looking at, unless you know you're looking at a low frequency inverter, you will see a common theme. And the power station world, super common. 2000 watt inverter peaks at 4000 watts. Anytime you see that, you're looking at a high frequency inverter. And the challenge with those is that an air conditioner that's not one of the newer inverter air conditioners, or doesn't have a soft start, or table saws, compressors, planers, water pumps, so that they're notorious for this. They can draw anywhere from 4 to 10 times their running amps at startup, right? So to get that pump running, if you got a pump that runs at, say, 1000 watts, it can potentially draw 10,000 watts at startup. So you have to understand. Now, most of them don't, to be fair, most don't, but you have to understand that if you're running something that has a major startup load, like an old window banger air conditioner, then even if it's only drawing 4 times what it would normally draw, if it normally draws 1000 watts at run, maybe it only draws 4000 at startup, but you try to start it on a high frequency inverter that says it can peak at 4000 watts, but frankly can only do that for a millisecond or two, then you absolutely have the potential of damaging that inverter and or the equipment that you're trying to run.
I burned down an inverter that exact way. I
Yeah.
burned one out doing exactly that thing, hitting that surge right at that maximum surge capacity. And to be honest with you, what's really, really common, and even in today's world, are mini fridges. A mini fridge that runs at about 800 watts will most likely peak around 800. And so
8,000, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's
Oh, yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. So the difference is that the large frequency inverters have big transformers in them, great big capacitors in them. And you'll notice, like my original inverter that I ran for 10 plus years is an Ames 4000 watt low frequency inverter. So the first thing I'll tell you is those are monsters. It weighs between 65 and 80 pounds. So just imagine, like, your power station with a 3600 watt inverter doesn't weigh as much as my 4000 watt low frequency inverter weighs, right?
Yeah.
But that's because of those heavy duty components. However, those large frequency inverters, you'll see mine is a 4000 watt inverter rated to peak at 12,000 watts. And it can peak at 12,000 watts for something like 30 seconds or something ridiculous like that. I don't even remember what it is because it's so long ago that I bought it, but it's an extended period.
Do you know on those Ames, those Ames ones? I've got a guy I'm working with who has one of those, and surprisingly, he's having surge problems, and it's a 6,000 watt 48 volt system, and he shouldn't
Low
have.
frequency?
Yeah, and it's one of the Ames, which is what surprised me, because usually you get those and you don't have to worry about that surge. But he's having issues where some of his devices, now he did find one refrigerator that was damaged by some lightning or something, and that one was peaking way above it, but he's still having the issue, and I'm wondering if maybe
How old is the
what is the
inverter?
life expectancy of it? Well, it's about 7-8 years old.
So if it's a 7 or 8 year old inverter, I would be surprised that it has
That's
trouble.
what I was too.
Because those Ames inverters are darn near bulletproof. I have fried one, though it was a modified sine wave, not pure and it was a high frequency, not low. My frying it though was pure silliness on my part, totally different story. But the low frequency inverters, those are darn near bulletproof. But if you hit them with massive surges, not off the draw side, but on the input side, like lightning strikes, there are things that could cause damage to them for sure. Or it could have one that's just maybe it's a fluke. That one, something about it isn't quite right. But honestly, those things are, I mean, the big transformers and everything they've got in them are massive. And I frankly would call Ames, because that's an American company. Now, they don't make their inverters here in the US. I think they did at one point. How long ago that is, I don't know, because I bought my Ames in 2013. And I don't even know if that one was American made, but it's bulletproof. But I would call Ames directly, because they will answer the phone. They'll talk to you. They'll email with you. They're good people. That'd be my advice. It's an American company. I will tell you that
because
I would do that. Honestly, the Ames.
Then usually when I see an Ames, I'm just like, okay, that's not the issue. Let's figure out what's going on. There's something, not feeding, your batteries aren't strong enough, or this or that. But in this case, I know that's not the case. I know there's nothing else there. And
I would say this: I'd want to put an amp clamp on it and find out what's it really doing.
Because where is it actually cutting off? Yeah.
Yeah, because you're talking a 6,000 watt Ames low frequency inverter, which has got to be like 100-pound monster. That thing should peak at 18,000 watts.
And not only that, it's not like it's going to be battery related either, because he's got 900 amp hours and 3 different, large 200 amp plus batteries on there. So he's got plenty of power there. The circuits are running in 4-aught, so he's good there. There's just no reason for this thing to be cutting out, short of the lightning strike did some damage that isn't
or heat
obvious. It's not heat.
So
it's not heat.
So it might be in between the two areas that you're thinking of. You've got this massive transformer. The massive transformer is bulletproof. You've got this massive battery array, but you still have the DC bus. That DC bus is going to have a lot of capacitors in it for the DC. So you could have a leaking capacitor. You can have, a MOSFET that's having problems.
Yeah.
And the other thing too is the reason this was found is that he was, like a lot of people, they build these systems, they call them their backup systems, but they never actually tested them. And it was like I told him, I said, if you've never tested it, then you know what, this thing, as far as I'm concerned, it isn't going to work. I said, turn it on, pretend you got hit by a hurricane. You can't use the electric grid for 3 days. Run that battery down to 0 before you turn it back on. And of course, he had a rainstorm in the middle of it and had some things go out. Now, at first, it was because he had a whole battery bank that wasn't balanced. He had a balancing problem, like Mike mentioned. He was using some 412 volts to make his 48 volt, and they were lousily balanced. And we got that fixed with a balancer, and everything's fine now. But it was, and then we expanded his battery bank, and everything was fine. And then all of a sudden, this started cropping up. But now he's to the point where he's never actually had that amount of draw, because you know how it is. I can live with just the refrigerator until you have a system that can support much more, and now he's putting more on it. Now it's the refrigerator and the TV and the mini fridge and the mini split and the this and the that, but it still isn't at that point. But it could just be a bad inverter.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, it absolutely could be. I would say it's entirely too bad. And here's a lesson for everyone watching. It's entirely too bad that he didn't run off that system a lot, because if you build a system and you don't truly test that system, then how do you know it's going to work when you need it? And it's kind of that 2 is 1, 1 is none mentality. If you don't know that it's going to do what you need it to do, then when you need it, it's like having a car that you've never driven that sits in your garage because you think one day you might need to get in the garage and grab the car and go to the grocery store, but it's been there for 5 years and the battery's dead and the gas is no good. Electronics, can sit for long periods of time and be just fine, maybe, but it also gets dust buildup and other things. And if you never tested it in the first place, not extensively, then you don't know if it didn't have a problem when you bought it.
And he was a perfect
This is
example of
true.
that. The first test we ran died at 50%. And I'm like, okay, I need to come over and figure out why. As it turned out, he had one battery, like Mike said, that just had gotten down to a point where it had shut off.
Right,
And it
right,
was running at 50%. It was running at
right,
50% capacity. That whole bank was dead.
right.
Um,
That's no good. I just saw a comment by Sleem Solar here. I think he saw on my channel, but I will tell you, you're right. And it's something else I was going to say about low frequency inverters. Low frequency inverters actually have the capability of conditioning power. So, one of the challenges with high frequency inverters is they can't really condition the incoming power. So if you have a utility input for like a generator and your generator is a bit noisy, they can't really clean that up, versus low frequency inverters actually can. And that is one area that they really shine. So he's right. There's a comment here. Low frequency inverters use heavy copper and iron transformers operating at standard grid frequencies. Yes. Offering massive surge capacity and rugged long-term durability for heavy motor loads at more money. And that's the other thing. My Ames in 2013 cost me $1,400 and some odd dollars. They're not cheap. Low frequency inverters are not for the faint at heart, right? So, the question earlier, what have you done for futurizing your system? Well, I forgot about that one. Yeah, I bought a almost $1,500 low frequency inverter, but I'm going to tell you something. I use it all the time, and I can run my air conditioning and run my table saw and run whatever the heck else I want. My fridge can power up and have a massive draw at the same time I'm playing my stereo and running my air conditioning and having some lights on, and my friend decides he needs to cut a piece of wood on my miter saw.
yeah.
It just hogs the idle power consumption side of things.
And that's kind of the thing. They all have their positives and negatives. I think both high frequency and low frequency are good. They each have their places. So I've got 5 large high frequency inverters. And one of my videos I did, what is a load that you should never power with your high frequency inverter? Welders. If you have like a 50, 60 amp welder that's going to pull 50, 60 amps, when you strike the arc, it's pulling a much higher amount, and it's not for a millisecond. It's pulling a lot. So I have a Ames knockoff low frequency inverter on a cart build that I did.
SGP.
Yep. And
They stole
essentially
it from
with that,
Ames.
yes, they did. They did. And essentially with it, I can power my welders with it. Now for my house HVAC and for my well pump, I do have, devices in front of it that lower that inrush current to make it easier on the inverters, so the inverters last longer. So that definitely helps the inverters. High frequency can last as long as low frequency if they're taken care of, and you're building in that excess capacity that you need. There are some other downfalls to high frequency. If you have a shoot through event to where an output MOSFET or IGGP, those short closed, now you can be sending DC current out of your AC. And that's why it's important to have a good high frequency inverter that's going to catch a fault and shut down the system. Matt and others talk about their EG4s, that I have this high frequency inverter and I came in one day and the power was just off and it was in, alert mode or warning mode or what have you. And it stopped working on its own. And I've seen people say, yeah, and then I flipped it off and flipped it back on, and then I heard a sizzle or whatever that it might be from their high frequency inverter. And that is important because it has the protections built in. So if you have that catastrophic event, it protects your appliances downstream. So having that built in there fixes the Achilles heel of a high frequency inverter, having those protections. But then on the low frequency side, low frequency inverters, not all of them are built how they used to be. Yeah, they might have that heavy duty, iron and wound, output transformer, which has your galvanic isolation and all that other good kind of stuff in there. But if on the DC side, if the components aren't that good, which a lot of the newer ones, I've seen that, they can still fail. So they might not have the longevity of the older low frequency inverters. So that's an important thing as well. So I think they each have their own area. I think you mentioned, Eric, that there's a higher idle draw with the low frequency inverters. So, having the right inverter for the right situation. But I think they're both good. I have both. I think they're both good. I kind of frown upon when someone says this is the only way to do it. You must have high frequency. You must have low frequency. There's pluses and minuses to both. You just need to use it in the right situation.
Right.
I think
Absolutely.
that's the important thing. Is it's just like we were saying earlier with power stations and that there is a right situation for it and a right situation for both. There is no one size fits all. If you've got those heavy, big startup loads, then yeah, that makes sense. But you're going to suffer on the idle consumption side because of it. If you've got that low usage, little trickle usage here and there, then you're going to not want that low frequency. You're going to want the high frequency because the idle consumption is going to be more friendly. There's not a single perfect solution here, is what we're coming down to.
Well, there is.
You
combine them both.
Combine, yes, you're going to be doing. Put both of them in use. All right, let's move on to the next question on here, which is a good one. Is on battery hacks, why must the chemistry match the batteries? I can connect a 48 volt through solar input and not expansion port. Why? Anyone want to take a swing at that?
Well, so, I see this a lot, and I see two things here that I think have to be addressed. Chemistry is one of them, and there are a number of issues there. But before you get to chemistry, I think one of the things I've been thinking about this a lot lately is that you really got to understand the difference between a solar input port and a battery expansion port, because those are two very different things. And I actually get a lot of times I get a question, I'm not charging this way, or I want to charge this way. And that usually tells me that you're not quite understanding what those two ports are. So the first thing I think to answer that question is a solar input port is just like it sounds. It is an input only, meaning that it's designed to connect solar panels to charge up your power station. That's all it is. And we are talking a power station here. And those solar inputs are actually MPPT charge controllers, so maximum power point tracking charge controllers. That's just a circuit board inside the power station itself, and they build whatever kind of port they want. It could be an Anderson plug, could be barrel style, 5525s or 8 millimeters or whatever, or XT60s, 90s, doesn't matter. It's all the same thing. It is just a way for you to connect solar panels to the charge controller. Now, guys like me that come along and say, you can plug a battery in here, are telling you that because, well, you can, but you have to understand what you're doing. You're actually transferring the power from that battery to the onboard battery of the power station by using that charge controller. So essentially, you're saying, well, since it maybe the maximum voltage on that charge controller is 60 volts, since it's 60 volts, I could take a 48 volt LFP battery that's really, fully charged about 53.7 volts, and I can plug it in there, and the charge controller is going to think that's a solar panel, and it's going to start drawing power off that battery, right? And until the battery, of course, drops to a voltage that's too low for it to do that. But it won't charge that up. The only way to charge that battery is to hook a charger up to it, or a charge controller and solar panels up to it, or something of that nature. So you're really extending the power station when you do that by transferring power from one battery to another, okay? And it's important to understand that, because the battery expansion port is not that at all. In fact, the battery expansion port is, in essence, direct access to the onboard battery. It is as if they took two cables, a red one and a black one, and they bolted those down to the battery terminals on the onboard battery, just like on your car, and then stuck them out the side of the power station and said, here, you can connect up a battery to this. And there's a big difference because one has circuitry involved. It has an actual computer brain that says, I'm going to take this power coming from the solar panels and I'm going to adjust it so that it's the correct voltage, and I'm going to have the correct amperage that I can charge up this onboard LFP battery and make sure that it does everything it needs to do. It's going to equalize all the cells and all that good stuff, versus a direct contact to that battery. And this is the key here that you've got to understand. If you're using an expansion battery on a power station, then you are directly adding that battery to the onboard battery of the power station. And you're not charging it up. You're actually expanding it. You're taking one battery. Now you have two or three or four or five that are all connected together in parallel, positive to positive, negative to negative throughout the system. And so you're not charging it. But what that does mean is that the onboard solar input MPPT charge controller can charge both the onboard battery and that expansion battery that you just added, just as the charger on that power station, if you plug it into utility power or a generator, can charge both as well, because they're all tied together. And I think it's really important to understand that. And I'd love to answer the second half of this question, but I've gone on so long already. I'm going to let the other guys answer the second half. But I hope that helps, because it's really important to understand these are two very, very different things. Okay, Matt, there you go.
If I can mention one thing really quick, when you're connecting up your power station through the expansion port to an external battery, they have to be at the exact same charge level. If you have one that is charged, say your power station is low and you have this nice charged battery and you plug it in, very bad things are about to happen.
Exactly.
So
yeah. Don't do it.
And that goes for these systems too. If I pick up another battery, I make sure it's the exact same voltage, not only at the battery pack, but I'm looking at the cell voltage. So I'm looking at each battery pack, the cell voltage. First, I charge them all up completely to 100%, make sure that everything's at 100%, but then I check the cell voltage and make sure the cell voltage is the exact same or extremely close, and then connect it in and no spark. But if you have one that's, say, 80% charged and one that's 50, and you connect it in, massive inrush, and you can have some serious issues. It could be quite dangerous.
Smoke. It could be magic smoke.
Magic smoke and magic fire, potentially.
Yeah, potentially, absolutely.
Okay.
So two parts there. I'm going to let either Matt or Mike answer that second part to that, which was the earlier part, which I love that one too.
So let's look at the earlier part, because this is really an important subject that really you'd have to understand the core difference in different types of chemistry that you have. Every battery has a charging profile. That means the amount of voltage and how you put that voltage in, how it absorbs that voltage, and how it provides that back to you. So if you're putting in at a certain way, for a lithium iron phosphate battery, that is different from a lead acid to an AGM. And you'll notice when you get the specs on a battery, a lot of the times, it will tell you this is the maximum charge. This is the charge rate. This is the maximum amperage voltage that you should be charging with. That is drastically different between a lead acid battery and a lithium iron phosphate battery. Now, are there some overlaps? Sure. there are some overlaps. The problem is if you put that into a safe zone, and as you narrow it down, and there might even be, I might even be able to pull up a chart on this. As you narrow this down a little bit, oh, this is perfect. As you narrow this down a little bit, you'll notice that the ability to reach the top of your battery and the bottom of your battery of different types becomes different. So for example, 100% charge for a lithium iron phosphate battery may be 13.6, whereas on an AGM, it's 12.9. Now, what happens to the AGM when you cram 13.6 volts into it? It's probably going to have, if not short-term damage, long-term damage. And the same thing's true for every aspect of the battery. When the battery gets full, what does it take to balance a lithium iron phosphate battery versus a lead acid battery? What does it take once it's full? How do you treat it? What is the balance or the float voltage that you want to maintain it to safely not damage the battery? So the fact is that all of these batteries have different charging profiles, and these profiles can have very adverse effects on them if you're mixing them. That does not mean that you can't take and safely take a certain set of batteries, hook them up together, and then work to a certain extent. That just means that when you start getting to the edges of all of that, there's going to be a lot of side effects that you can't possibly deal with safely in all circumstances. Now, I don't know if anyone wants to add anything to that, but
Well, I would say that. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Mike.
Sure. So one thing that you have to remember is that there's a very big difference in resistance with a lead acid battery compared to an LFP. LFP has extremely low resistance. So if you have those two batteries and you connected them together and say they're at the exact same voltage at that point, as you charge or discharge, now you have that LFP, which is either going to take everything that lead acid battery has out, or it's going to do vice versa, and the LFP is going to look at it as essentially a dead short, as it is a higher voltage than the lead acid battery. They're completely incompatible with each other and extremely dangerous to even try.
Yeah, and I would add to that. I would add to that LFP batteries have something called a BMS, or battery management system, which is specifically designed to protect them both in charge and discharge, and manage the charging of their cells. Because the one thing you have to understand is that an LFP battery, if you open one up, it looks like somebody took a whole bunch of kind of like a D cell battery and stacked them all together in a series parallel configuration. So an LFP battery is actually really a whole lot of batteries put together as one, and then it has a battery management system. And they are often charged at one specific voltage rather than a ramped voltage, versus a lead acid battery, which is literally acid, an acid water bath with lead plates in it. And when you charge those, you actually charge them on a 4-stage charging system. So a charge controller, if you were to buy a fairly modern charge controller that can handle LFP batteries as well as lead acid, you would notice that the lead acid battery charging ramp is very different. It actually has a bulk charge where it's going to bring the voltage way up and really get those batteries boiling. And then it has what's called an absorption charge, where it's going to slightly lower the voltage but increase the amperage that's going to the batteries. And then eventually it gets into float, which is where it's going to lower the voltage and the amperage and just kind of trickle charge the batteries. But it has a 4th stage too. And that 4th stage is called the equalization stage, which you would normally do periodically so that you literally can boil the impurities off of the battery acid that's in your battery. And that also means you have to add distilled water periodically, because they literally will boil off fairly often. And you have to do things like check specific gravity to make sure that your cells are all equal and all that good stuff. But that's very, very different than the way an LFP battery charge is managed by its battery management system. So they're just completely incompatible systems. And honestly, I would say there's no reason today to use lead acid, AGM, or quite frankly, lithium ion batteries in an off-grid system or to expand a power station, except for if you're in an absolute emergency, then plugging it into the solar input is okay, as long as you understand what you're doing. Because if you put a lead acid battery and you plug it into the solar input on your power station, it'll kill that battery. It's not just going to drain it, because when you see lead acid batteries and they call them deep cycle batteries, they're not nearly as deep cycle as you think they are. They will get killed. You will destroy them in a very, very short window of time, because every time you completely drain a lead acid battery, 100%, drain it all the way down, you cut its cycle life in half. And that's important. And they only have a 200 to 300 life cycles as it is. So it's just not a good idea.
So in short, what we're saying is that because their charge profiles, their voltage range, their operating range is so different, it really isn't safe to do this at all. And this is why you don't hear anyone suggesting doing it. There are some extreme cases and places where you can use them to help with chargers and stuff like that. But even that is, as he states, that charger, as we said before, it's going to pull voltage until it gets down to a cutoff point. That cutoff point is going to be past where that battery doesn't take damage. It's too late. You've already destroyed at least half of its cycles, sometimes even more than that. So I think that answers that question pretty thoroughly. I did want to go down to...
It's a fun one, though. I've seen that many times.
Yeah.
Yes. And that was why I brought it up here, is because I knew we'd all have good perspectives on it and be able to get a good, thorough answer to it. So you guys are all smarter than me. I have an Eco Delta 2 and want to build a bigger off-grid system slowly. Should I get a 48-volt battery and connect or the Delta first, then build up an inverter? All right, Paul. It really depends on what you're accomplishing. Obviously, your long-term goal is to get to a much bigger system. And the question becomes is, how big are you looking to get to here? Because you have, and if I remember correctly, you're running on a couple of 100 amp hours of 12-volt batteries at this point. So that means that you're going to be jumping from one completely different system to another system. If I remember correctly, I think you've got 200 or 300 amp hours of 12 volts, if I remember correctly. But you're using charge controllers, your independent parts system. You don't have an all-in-one, so most of those components will upgrade to 48 volt. And I'm not familiar with it does parallel the battery for the EcoFlow Delta 2. And Eric, do you know, is that one that would parallel easy? I mean, obviously, if he's serial batteries together for that, it's probably not a bad idea.
I'm sorry, I was just shooting you a note offline.
Okay.
But what was the question again?
So the question is that should he parallel some into EcoFlow to 48 volts and then expand into an inverter, or should he go straight to an inverter?
Well, so I think your initial question to him is how big do you want to go is really key here. If it were me and you're asking me about, you want to build a system, but you're not looking to build a 60 kilowatt hour system with, 40 kilowatts of inverter power, etc. Then I would say you already have the Delta 2. Adding the watt cycle cable is super easy and cheap to do. If you have a 48 volt, which is really a 51.2 volt LFP battery, decent quality battery, there's absolutely no reason not to go that route as a starting point, right? Because you're going to learn some things. For example, when I did it with the Delta 3, I didn't like the way the Delta 3 charged up my LFP batteries. It works, but they'll never really, I think, stay at 100% state of charge. And this is a common problem. If you buy an LFP battery and drop it into an RV that doesn't have one of the modern DC converters set up for LFP batteries, then your LFP battery will only ever get charged to 80% until you make the conversion. So you could have this where your LFP battery gets to 95 or 98% or 99%, doesn't hit 100% because the Delta 2 cuts off the charging because it's decided it's all the way charged, which I would argue it's not, but they probably did it that way on purpose because it's not going to hurt it. But and so you may find, okay, well, maybe I'll add my own solar charge controller to make sure it gets fully charged. And then I add some batteries. And then I decide maybe I want to add a charger to run off a generator. And you're just adding that to that battery. And maybe you add another battery. What you're doing is you're starting to build that do-it-yourself system to where eventually you'll pull that Delta 2 off because you don't need it. And you can use it for what it was designed for, which is a portable power station. So I think depending on your approach and what you're trying to do, absolutely nothing wrong with going to, a battery and a watt cycle cable on a Delta 2 first as your first experiment with doing that. Maybe that runs great for you for a while. The one beautiful thing about LFPs that you could not do with lead that we were just talking about is that if you've got an LFP that you've had for a year or a year and a half and you haven't really abused it horribly, you can pick up another one and parallel them, and it's not going to be a real issue. Versus lead, you couldn't do that. So, if you bought a 48 volt LFP today and put it on your Delta and you ran that for 6 months or whatever, and then thought, I'm going to get another one and I'm going to put an inverter in too. You could do that. So it's 6 to 1, half dozen of another. I have no problem with doing the cable on the Delta 2. You might find you run it like that for 2 or 3 years, or just get an inverter and go the other route. But you already have the Delta 2. So if it's a monetary thing, you got the Delta 2 now. Wouldn't hurt to do an upgrade on it first. That's my take.
Yeah, I agree. I would say if you went to 48 volt battery and cable route, make sure that you get a battery that you would have put in your system if you were to build it from scratch right now. So if you decide my system's only going to have 314 amp hour wall mount batteries, and that's what I'm planning, well, then get a 314 amp hour wall mount battery that you would have used anyway, and then do that. Because if you're gonna do wall mounts, but you're getting a server rack battery just for this, but now you're not going to reuse the server rack battery in the permanent system, then I think that might not have been the best choice. So use the battery that you're going to build your permanent system with and go with that.
Totally
Great
agree.
all the way around, and totally agree. In other words, the short answer on the advice is buy the battery you plan to use in the future, and then there's no problem hooking it up and using it that way until you get to that point. And that way you're prepared for it when you get there. And that brings me to, I know we're got about 10 minutes left on the live stream, so I want to get this one last big question in, which I hear all the time. And this is, what is one solar component that we would tell the viewers to buy big enough the very first time? In other words, what is something that's very expensive or that you just think is too much problem later on to upgrade or change? What would it be if you only could pick one? What would that be? Keeping in mind that, like me, the market changes. So I would have to say, for me personally, I think that we're going to go to the previous answer, which was the battery. If you're going to buy something big enough the first time, and I don't mean you have to buy the whole bank, but don't buy, like Mike said, don't buy a rack mount battery if you plan to go wall mounts. Save a little longer, get the wall mount right.
Don't get it from Walmart.
And don't get it from Walmart.
Because that's what I think you said at first.
So, but if you're going to go one way, then do that, and that way you have the right battery power that you need and everything, and then you can deal with, if you have to change your inverters, you have to change your power station, all that's fine, but at least you end up, batteries are one of the most expensive aspects here. They also seem to be one of the few of them that really I think has gone through the biggest changes in the last couple of years and probably don't have as many growth spurts coming up. I think we're going to see some big changes in the rest of the markets. The all-in-one type thing, the all this government regulation around inverters and all that kind of stuff may change the inverter market again, yet again. New, better, nicer features and maybe worth waiting and replacing. That's my answer. What do you guys think?
Well, I was going to say batteries, 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 and then batteries. My experience was buying 6 and then 8 and then 12. I would also say buy LFP batteries. Forget lead,
Always,
forget
yeah.
AGMs. The only reason to consider a lead acid based battery is if you're in extreme cold environments and you absolutely, can't protect the batteries. You can't build something to protect them. Then maybe you could still go that AGM route. I do have viewers that are up in northern Alberta and places like that where minus 50 degrees or 60 degrees is absolutely possible. And if they leave their facility or their cabin, whatever, for a week or two at a time, it could cause some damage. But truthfully, it could also cause damage on lead batteries too. So don't kid yourself. But I will tell you that you're not going to have too much battery power. And when you think you figured out a system and you need 10 kilowatt hours of battery power and you buy that 10 kilowatt hours, you may soon find that you should have got 15 or 20. So I would say
50.
batteries, 50 batteries. You're probably you here. And actually Matt said it earlier, and maybe Mike too. Once you build a system, you're going to find out you're going to run more things on it. I mean,
And not because you enjoy wasting energy, just
No.
because there's things you can do when it's free that you wouldn't do normally. I know
Or that
people
you
that
do
burn off excess
naturally.
power heating their pool.
Yeah. Or you just do naturally that you thought maybe you wouldn't do. Like, for example, when I first built my place, if I was going to watch something on TV, I could just run the generator. But then I moved out there. And that meant I was running my generator a lot more than normal, because if I wanted to run my internet, I built it so I could run a refrigerator and lights. Really, that was the basics. Maybe a
So
couple
that's all you
12-volt
need, right?
fans or something. Yeah, right. And then it's a stereo, and then it's internet, and then it's a TV. Just some modern conveniences. But I mentioned earlier I run an air conditioner in the summertime, because by the time I built my system, I had put enough power in, enough battery capacity, I should say, that I could not only run that and not worry too much if the sun dips behind the clouds, but if I wanted to, after the sun goes down, I want to run my air conditioner for another hour, I can do that. If I want to watch a movie for a couple hours with my wife, we can do that. And there's no worry. If I want to run a coffee pot in the morning, and I actually still use a propane basic camp coffee pot. But if I want to hook up an electric one, I could, and you will start doing that. You will push that system. I killed my first battery bank twice. And then when I built the next one, I swore I wasn't going to do it. And it lasted me 8 years, golf cart batteries. I went 8 years on my second set of golf cart batteries. And then I killed them again. I mean, by kill them, I mean completely drained the system out. By accident, but it happens. And I can't stress enough today, one LFP, if you don't go with lithium iron phosphate batteries, you've got to have a good reason not to, because their cycle life is 20 times lead. And too big and bigger.
At some point here, very, very soon, my suspicion is that we'll start willing batteries to people.
Could be.
Yeah. You buy a 200 kilowatt hour battery and you will it to your children because it will outlast you. Go ahead, Mike.
So I'm going to have a different outlook. I know both you guys said batteries. I'm going to break against the herd on this one, and I will
12,000
say
XP.
no, but close. I will say inverters. Inverters is, you need to get big enough. I see too many people that will get a single inverter and they don't get enough batteries. A lot of times, maybe not enough solar either. But what will happen is they'll have their single inverter and they'll use it. And I notice when I turn stuff on, the lights flicker. I turn on the AC, the lights flicker. I turn on this, the lights flicker. I turn on that. And what's happening is they are stressing the heck out of that inverter, making it try to run a whole house off a single inverter that's not large enough to do so. And I've seen a lot of different inverters fail at the 1 year, 2 year mark, especially on the high frequency ones, because you're asking it to run loads that it wasn't designed for. Yes, it's going to say it can run 10,000, 12,000 watts, whatever that is, but it's not really set up to do the massive surges or run at that level continuous. You're really made to run at half of its continuous if you're looking for good longevity. So I would say make sure that you get the right model for your needs and that you can also parallel it and add additional ones to it relatively easily, like the 6,000, the 12,000, the FlexBoss 21s, the 18s, 18 kPVs. So, and I'm just mentioning one brand, but whatever that you go with, make sure that you can parallel and that it's big enough, because I'm seeing way too often that someone connects up their inverter and thinking, this is good, this will power my house, when they haven't done the math to figure out what powering their house means.
All right. I think that pretty much answers all of our questions. Not all of them. Let me make sure we didn't miss anything here in the last minute.
But you look at Eric's. He's got 4,000 watt low frequency, and it's always run everything. He had enough capacity built in that it would cover as he added that AC, as he added the internet, as he added the stereo. All that capacity was there, and that's the key. Build in enough capacity. If you think I'm going to need 8 to 10,000 watts, don't get an 8 to 10,000 watt single inverter. You're already maxed it out. You're already stressing it. So if you need 2 inverters, 3 inverters, or just get a much bigger inverter, do that.
Yeah, I got to be honest with you. It's funny you say that, because I'm often called out, because people often say you need to match the inverter to your expected loads. And I always, and they also say that about generators. And I always say nonsense. You need to match your inverter to what you don't think you might need to run with it. In my mind, I don't mind that my 4,000 watt inverter constantly runs at below 25% capacity. It doesn't bother me, because I needed something that I could run heavy startup loads, and that I could run at the same time. I didn't want, because I run an electric refrigerator at my off-grid setup. I did that on purpose. I didn't want propane. And now it doesn't have a freezer compartment. If I want a freezer, I have to run that separately. So that refrigerator is a little more efficient. However, I wanted that to be able to run at 1,000 watts when I was running my air conditioning at 1,000 watts, while I was running my table saw at 1,500 watts. And I didn't want any of those things to get shut down or to, suddenly not run right or whatever. And it just, my philosophy on the inverter was have enough power so that you can run whatever it is you might need to run. And if if your wife's in doing her hair with her 1,000 watt thing she uses or whatever, and you want to make coffee in the morning, and it typically uses 1,500 watts when the hot plate's on, it's not going to trip a system out. So I won't disagree with you on that. I just look at batteries as, I always tell everybody, and this will be my final thought, because I know we're going to cut it off here soon, but I always tell everybody, you're not building a solar, speaking of not saying words right, you're not building a solar system or a solar powered system. The heart of the system is the batteries. Everything is based off that. I don't care what anybody says. It's batteries first, because you need solar to charge the batteries. You need an inverter to take the power from the batteries to power up your 120 volt stuff. You need a charger so your generator can charge your batteries. all comes down to the batteries. So from my perspective, I don't disagree with you at all. I was even thinking you could say charge controllers, because if you put in a big charge controller, which I also did, then you can add
Mhm.
more solar to it later, and you don't have to buy another charge controller. But so I can't disagree with you. You could make that argument about everything. Anyway,
This is true.
It's a tough question because you could look at it a couple of different ways. In order to make it batteries, you have to actually know that you need to go with a 48-volt system to buy the 48-volt batteries. And then if you've done that, then knowing that you need a 48-volt inverter solves the problem. But if you went out and bought a whole bunch of 24-volt batteries and bought an inverter that matched it, none of it matters if you end up at 48 volts later anyway. And if had you done something 10 years ago, chances are that's where you would be right now, because 48 volt is an industry change that's really taken off in the last couple of years.
yeah,
Really
it wasn't
changed
even a thing when I did 24 volts. Everybody was kind of switching there, and this is 13 years ago. I think there may have been some 48-volt systems, but it wasn't that wasn't a thing that people were doing 13 years ago. And that's something that I think you mentioned earlier, which is that understand that when you build a system today, even if you build like me, set and forget type setup, you're going to find that things are going to change. And I have no doubt that, in fact, I've said this before, the computer industry in the 90s and the early 2000s went crazy. And every 6 months, you might as well think about getting a new hard drive or more memory or another processor. Well, that is the off-grid power world today. I see stuff coming out that is like, wait a minute, this is totally new. Like I've just reviewed some portable refrigerators they're frankly amazing little things. They sip the power, they work brilliantly. We use them for all kinds of things you never imagined you would. We didn't really have that stuff. You know, back when I built my system, you had those really big, heavy, thick off-grid refrigerators and chest freezers, that were like super efficient, but they were built like tanks, right? Well, today you don't even need that anymore. And
a perfect example of this is an RV air conditioners. I spent the last 2 days working on a video for an RV air conditioner that I'm putting in my wife's coffee trailer. And this thing runs off of a 12-volt battery. It sips at 400 watts and gives you 12,000 BTUs of cooling power. It's just, it blew my mind how quiet and peaceful it is. You could actually hear yourself talk. I think it was running at 38 decibels, and that's at full steam. I mean, this is unheard of just 5 years ago. And it's just amazing. So I think that a lot of the equipment we have today, to your point, is going to calendar age out and not. I made the joke about inheriting batteries, but it may be that they don't inherit them because it ends up being some high voltage battery or something else along that line of technology. Who knows? Anyway,
I want to add this though.
Batteries.
I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell the audience this because this is something that you need to hear. Back in this is a long time ago, folks. We're going to the 1900s. 1993. I was looking at trying to get a new single speed CD-ROM for my computer, but double speed CD-ROMs had come out. And I read an article that that resonated with me ever since. And it was the only thing you're going to get if you sit on the fence is splinters in your butt. So if you're looking at buying something and you keep thinking next year there's going to be something better out, well, next year there will be. But if you wait till next year, then you're going to wait till the year after and the year after and the year after. So don't be afraid to go out and build that system today, despite what we're telling you, because yes, things are going to change, but you'll never build the system if you keep waiting for it to not change.
And the fact is, the 24-volt system that you started 10, 12 years ago, you're still using today. So it's not like just because it ages out, it goes away.
Yeah, no, I could use it for another 10 or 12 years.
And that's the thing with these sodium batteries that are going to come out, it's going to change so many things. But all of us that have built out our LFP systems, we're going to get our cycles out of them. And then at that point, we're going to switch over. But we're not going to take you know, the
Maybe.
tens of thousands of dollars in batteries and say, okay, sodium's
Ma-
out. I'm just going to
Maybe
rip these out now.
You see
maybe
this
we
right
switched
here?
out, and maybe those are so big and heavy they're like built in like a propane tank that's underground. You know, I don't think we're going to be doing sodium
No,
like we do
you
lithium
see,
iron phosphate.
you see this right here?
Yeah.
I will
Your
age out
lithium iron
before my.
phosphate will be there past that, right?
Yeah, I
Me
think
too.
so, guys. Sorry.
Yeah.
If the cycle life holds up, now some people say the BMSs will only last 10 years, and you know, I still should theoretically and hopefully be up there enjoying myself in 10 years from now. But if they go the full 20,000 cycles, because that's the thing that we didn't get a chance to talk about, put this down for a topic on a video, you guys, maybe, or another live stream, life cycles, because they rate them at 100% depth of discharge. But when you drop to 30 to 40%, there's a big difference. And I know
And
with
if
my
you look at
batteries,
what you actually get, how many cycles you actually produce a year, these batteries are going to outlive us. Some of them are looking at 20 to 30, 40 years of life. I mean, it's just,
Mhm,
it's
mhm.
crazy. I mean, you look at 10,000 cycles. I know I try to use mine every day and I only get 250 cycles a year.
And
look
at 30%, you're looking at 20 to 25,000 cycles.
Right. And you literally, the batteries will be here long after I'm dead and gone. Their half-life in the ground will be 10 times mine.
Mhm.
So looking at mine behind me that have been going for a year, I'm at 49 cycles. So yeah, the calendar
49
aging is,
cycles in a year.
49 cycles.
so it's the calendar aging that's going to catch up. They might only
Yep.
be good for 10, maybe a little bit longer. I've seen some that at the 5-year mark they're tested and they still have, you know, 95% capacity. A lot of it depends on if you abuse it or not, and then also the temperature that you run it in. The higher the temperature, especially once you get above 90 degrees, and I've read white papers on this, they degrade much, much quicker. The important thing is keep them at a temperature that you would want to be in yourself. Don't put them outside in Arizona and have it out there, you know, cooking in a metal shed. That's definitely, you know, gonna make a difference. Try to have an AC to keep them cool, and they're gonna last so much longer.
All right, guys, I know we all agreed that we were going to end here a little bit. That was 10 minutes ago, so I'm going to go ahead and put it into it. It's been a pleasure. Eric, thank you for joining us. Mike, thank you for joining us. I really appreciate it. It was my pleasure having you guys on and talking to you, and simulcasting on all three of our channels was a fantastic addition to it. Eric, thanks for showing me the light. I knew it could be done. I just never had actually taken the time to do it. I hadn't been sitting on that side of the table for so long. I didn't know how to do it. So
We're glad to
I'm
help.
glad to, and I'm sure Mike's audience will appreciate it. He's here with me a lot, so you're always welcome back, both of you, all the time. And if you ever show up to any of my live streams and have a subject that you're interested in, just send me a ping. I'll add you in. I don't have a problem with that whatsoever. I try to do this every week. Usually it's Monday night at 7 o'clock Eastern time, but it doesn't always work out that way. I go into a lot of different celebrations, usually on how much we've gotten in subscribers and everything. I'm going to skip it this week because we have so many different fans from different fans and members and subscribers and whatever you're going to call them this week on from so many different channels. I just want to say thank you to you guys. I really appreciate you being here and you being a part of it. And hopefully everyone's got something from it. I think we gave away all the memberships we had to give away, and
Yep.
I think there's still a link in there for anybody who wanted. I would post that one more time. If you want the free solar class, let me make sure I'm passing off the free one here. Nope, it's not the free one. The password for the free solar class is just Mattman. So if you want a free solar class on, you're welcome to get it. The discount code is Mattman. Everybody's welcome to that. And if you guys have anything you need to share, let me know. I'm sure you got your own channel if you want to post them there.
Yeah, I just thanks for having me. It was fun. Enjoyed it. And you know, my folks know that I don't do a lot of lives. Usually I'm gone on the weekends. And so that's usually when I do my lives, so I don't get them out there as often. So thanks for inviting me. It was a lot of fun, guys. I really enjoyed it. I think this is probably one of the liveliest lives I've been on in doing lives for, I've done off and on probably for 3 or 4 years. So fantastic. Lots of fun. Great audience. You guys got some great subscribers, lots of awesome questions. So that was fun to see. And, thanks for having me.
Well, I was glad you were here. And yeah, we have a great audience, but it also helps to have 3 people that have motor mouths. So all 3 of us aren't afraid to talk. That helps a lot. Me and Mike have the same problem. We talk for 3 hours and then look down and go, oh my gosh, 3 hours went by already? All
Good
right,
times.
Mike, anything you have for your...
Just want to thank you for inviting me to this. Of course, it was extremely nice to meet Eric. We haven't spoken before, so this was pretty neat to be able to connect. On my channel, I've got a few new videos coming out. I'm always doing reviews on different products. I've got one video which actually ties into what we were talking about today. So 12 volt versus 24 versus 48 volt batteries for a 48 volt inverter, wiring them up, and pros and cons. I'll be releasing that shortly. But yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure. Enjoy being on here. Great audience, and really enjoy, all the questions and all the participants, because it really makes this fun, especially, to interact with everyone on it. And then I have my windsolarforum.com. I think that's posted up above. So if you want to check out our forum and post something in there, always willing to help anybody troubleshoot their system or what have you. So just want to thank everyone again for being here, and thank you, Matt, for having me, and of course, Eric, very nice meeting you.
Yeah, you too, buddy. And don't forget Curmudgeon there that was chasing a brown bear down.
Nice.
Did you see that last comment?
Yes.
All right, guys, I'll put an end to it. Thanks, everybody, for joining. Please come back and see us next week. If you haven't subscribed to the other guys' channels, I'll make sure that they're in the comments below, and I'm sure they've already done it in their comments. If not,
Well, we will.
all are.
Absolutely.
I'm at Mattman Solar, the old Jarhead, and Mike Solar Garage. Thanks, guys, for watching. We'll see you on the next one.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.